Alright now, Simpkins, where are we with the whole build me a race of bionic super soldiers that are part werewolf thing? What, sir? Well, remember, Simpkins, I came into your barracks last night and I told you to get working on a super-secret initiative to turn soldiers into part robot, part werewolves, so I can eradicate the evil scourge of women who won't return my calls from the face of the earth. I remember you coming in here last night saying something about it, sir, but with all due respect, Colonel, I thought you'd been at the gin again. Been at the gin again? Been at the gin again? I can tell you, Simpkins, you will know full well when I have been at the gin again, because I will be wearing the regimental Been at the Gin Again Crocs Tutu and Frankie Says Relax issue t-shirt, as it clearly states in the Army's beautifully written, and yet, quite frankly, sloppily illustrated handbook. I heard the Queen had a cousin or something do it, and he's a bit simple, poor chap. Never could get the idea of doors. They made him head of IBM last time I checked. Right, so, if I'm understanding you correctly, you are desperately serious about the idea of me and my team putting together cyborg wolf fighters to take down women you feel personally have rejected you in some sort of bonkers science fiction revenge scheme because you could never accept the power you hold in your job versus the clear lack of power you obviously hold in your sexual relationships. By jeepers, Simpkins, it's like you're reading my mind. You haven't perfected some sort of brain-reading device and disguised it as a cream bun, have you, Simpkins? Because I just ate a cream bun on my way in here, and I thought it tasted a little odd. But then again, I don't like raisins. No, sir, no brain-reading devices. That's not possible, sir. Neither is making android-wolf hybrids to fight some petty and misogynistic personal war either, so, the science just isn't there, I'm sorry to say. Well, dash it all and by crumble. I saw a documentary on this just the other day. I'm sure I did. A man in Iowa, of all godforsaken wastelands, was building 50 part man, part chimp, part Chevrolet Volt Beast to go and take down his ex-wives. He had 3 of the blighters, bleeding him dry they were, not to mention that newsletter they all published about his bald spot and love of train fucking. A man can only take so much. Well, may I suggest you go see him then, sir? Maybe he can help. He seems to know what he's doing when it comes to certifiably insane vengeance-based human-animal hybrid robotics. I will go there at once. I will travel in my invisibility trousers by dolphin, with a good headwind, and after that bowl of matron's tapioca I ate for lunch, I should be there by 11's tomorrow. It's a dash shame our plucky British engineers can't come up with more things like this. I mean, we can make a lasagna that's ready in 10 minutes in the ping machine. Why on earth can't I get a robot wolf man, huh? Well, I have come up with this, sir. What on earth is that, Simpkins? It looks bloody silly and a waste of time and energy, I don't mind telling you. Well, it's called the After Movie Diner, sir, and it's a podcast. Oh, could it help me get back at my ex-girlfriends? Weirdly, sir, no. But it will probably cause you to have some more. Yes, hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the After Movie Diner. And boy, do we have an exciting After Movie Diner for you. In fact, we have quite an exciting one and quite a long one for you. This week's episode of the After Movie Diner is brought to you exclusively by the new Dying Elk Herd album, For Real This Time, which you might remember the Dying Elk Herd from this song.
Don't let the river bees get you. Don't let the river bees get you. Don't let the river bees get you. You better watch your back, my friend. Right place, wrong time when you're dead. You better hide from the shadows that haunt the trees and tread lightly by the water's edge. Something's out there looking beneath the moonlight in the river's down night.
Which, of course, was the catchy hit single from the film of the same name, Don't Let the River Beast Get You, which is absolutely fantastic and was made by Charlie and Farley. Matt Farley was the guest on last time's show, so that's how it all connects in. Anyway, the Dying Elk Herd's album, For Real This Time, can be found on iTunes. Look it up. But to one very lucky listener of the After Movie Diner, I am holding in my hand an actual physical copy of the CD. It's got a plastic case and everything with a wonderful inlay book, some rich cover art, and just everything anyone could want. So send us an email, send us something telling us why you think you should be the owner of the Dying Elk Herd's first album for real this time. And if I think it's good enough, we'll mail it out to you. The email address to send that to is aftermoviediner@gmail.com, and you can contact us there about this competition or indeed about anything you like. Send us some messages, you swine, so we've got something to read out here on the damn show. aftermoviediner@gmail.com.
The future is us, and it couldn't look better. So we're told when we're kids we're gonna live forever. But an air of desperation lingers, and disappointment rings, and echoes aloud a sad song tomorrow sings. The world is ours, it's gonna last forever. So we're told when we're kids if we can make it better. But discontent and tragic heartbreak have killed what we were sold, and left behind a future that's dark and cold, where jilted lovers will cry, dear friends could say goodbye, while troubled souls survive, and others far too young will die. This ain't no place for the faint of hearts. Forever's getting shorter all the while. I don't think that I could force another smile. And though it's sad but true, it's necessary to endure a world wicked and dreary. I've made it this far, but that don't mean I'll last another day. The choice is ours, and we should have known better than to think that our best days could last forever. True resolve and real devotion have faded far from view, forever to change the face of the world we knew. Now jilted lovers will cry, dear friends could say goodbye, some troubled souls survive, and others far too young will die. This damn sure ain't for the faint of hearts. Forever's getting shorter all the while. I don't think that I could force another smile. Though it's sad but true, it's necessary to endure a world wicked and dreary. I've made it this far, but that don't mean I'll last another day. And I think that someday I might find a cure, and I feel I should, to finally.
And you'll be able to hear more from the Dying Elk Herd's first album, For Real This Time, at the end of the show. And again, a physical copy of that album can be won by writing to us at aftermoviediner@gmail.com and letting us know in the most creative way possible why you think you should be the proud owner of that CD. And of course, if you do that and you're particularly creative, inventive, or enjoyably fun, then who knows, I might throw in a Best of Moten Media CD as well for free. But they are going fast, so while stocks last, get your email in to aftermoviediner@gmail.com. But while you're at it, why not throw the After Movie Diner itself a few bones? Go over to patreon.com/After Movie Diner. That's patreon.com/After Movie Diner and become a sponsor or a patron of the show. So that we can get the show out more frequently, more regularly, and so that this isn't such a bloody chore. And also so that I can update the website and pay for various things that I need to do in order to keep the show on the internet. So please go over to patreon.com, that's patreon.com/After Movie Diner, and become a sponsor. Every tiny, tiny little bit helps people. Please do it. That'll be great. Thank you. And while you're at it, why not give us a review or rating on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you come across the show. Review and rate us. It's the cheapest, free. In fact, it's free. It's the free best way to get other people to listen to the show, because if you can't sponsor the show, then the best thing to do is tell all your friends, tell everyone you know, tell people on the street, tell the bus driver, tell the lady at the lunch line that you're chatting up, tell everyone about the After Movie Diner, and rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever rating and reviewing can be done. And now, let's have some actual podcasting, shall we, people?
Well, Gary, here we are. Somehow we made it through here.
What? Where?
We're in the sequel, of course.
Sequel? What sequel?
Well, Sloppy Seconds, the movie sequel podcast. Come on, get with it.
Oh, that's right. Our podcast is exclusively about sequels, where the budget is bigger.
Well, we don't actually have a budget.
Get away from her, you bitch!
But the action's more exciting?
I don't know much about action.
Hey, you got a line?
Sure, man.
Allow me, scum.
The babes are hotter?
Wait, there's babes involved?
How about some of this? So tasty and hard and firm that it just melts in your mouth.
Do the kills get gorier and more extreme?
Kills? Did we talk about this?
Never mind. So find Sloppy Seconds, the movie sequel podcast, exclusively on the Horrorphilia Network.
Because when all other podcasts are through, we're already thinking about part 2.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to the After Movie Diner, and back on the show again to do more Keaton and Caine, or Caine and Keaton, depending on which way around we do it this week, is the wonderful, it's the awesome, it's the published author, it's the guy you should rush out and buy his book Barricade, my longest, oldest, and dearest friend, the wonderful Mr. Jon Wallace. Hello, sir.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm very good, sir, and yourself?
Not great. I've been ill for a few days, so if I cough, splutter, sneeze, blow my nose, generally make ill sounds, there is a reason. I'm not just doing it for comic effect.
Comic effect. Oh, well, I can edit a lot of those out because you're on the other channel, so I can always snip them. So don't worry. But yes, unless if you hear John sniff or sneeze during an actual flow of a sentence, then that might still be in the show.
Yeah.
And we're going to be doing this, the whole thing, the whole show has basically been contrived so we could cover what I felt was one of the best movies of last year, which was Michael Keaton's return to the big screen proper in a leading role for the first time in a while, and also undoubtedly some of his greatest work, which was Birdman. And then scrabbling around. This isn't thematically strong, this episode, at all, apart from the two actors involved. Scrabbling around to try and find... We wanted something that was equally new, but equally bonkers that Caine had done. And there's a bunch of stuff that Caine has done recently, but like...
Well, I was intrigued by that one I sent you with Beckinsale or something. It just looked like an absolute howler of a disaster movie. Did you see that one I sent you? It had
what was that?
I sent you something saying, what about this beauty? And it had Caine, Kate Beckinsale, and something else.
Oh, Stonehurst Asylum.
Yes, that's the one, yeah. It looked really feeble. And I thought there might be...
Is that an actual movie?
Oh, I don't know. I thought it was.
I thought it was... Is it not part of a TV show, or was it not like a TV thing? Because I came across this recently. Is it an actual movie? It's an actual movie. Oh, okay. Well, we could... Oh, man. Okay. We can definitely do that.
Because just looking at the picture, I was giggling just at the picture because it looked like it was going to be properly daft. Oh, yeah, Ben Kingsley is in it as well.
Yeah, Ben Kingsley is in it. Yeah, I mean, it looks... To me, just from the pictures, it looks like made for TV. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And it's Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, no, I can definitely get hold of that and watch that, so we can do that next time if you like. I don't mind
Actually, it gets 7 on IMDb, which is not bad.
Yeah, we can check it out.
It's got Thewlis in as well.
But so we might do that down the road. But I, rightly or wrongly, decided to do Kingman, the Secret Service, which I have to say is a horribly, horribly clunky title. Because instead of it being King's Men, which would make sense, it's Kingsman, the Secret Service. And I don't... Like, nothing about that title do I like. But I really enjoyed the movie. So, it's not a leading role for Caine, but he is in there being his most Caine-iest. So they're the two movies we're discussing tonight. Two new ones, which is unusual for the diner, but Birdman and Kingsman. I suppose they both end in man?
Yes,
and also they both have semicolons, because isn't Birdman also called, like...
Yeah, or the unexpected virtue of ignorance.
That's it, right. Which is, again, you had me at Birdman, happy with that, and then that, like semicolon, incredibly clunky and pretentious.
Yeah.
And not really fair to the movie, really.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is... it'll be interesting to see how much we've got to say about them, because both... I liked both of them. And I was surprised by how much I like both. We could have done this a while ago, but curiously, because you saw Kingsman on an advanced screening in November or something, didn't you?
The Kingsman's interesting because 20th Century Fox in the US have fucked around with its release date massively. It was meant to come out... It was finished, I think, back in, like, August, September time. It was meant to come out, I think, in October over here. Then it was pushed back to, like, February... Then it was... then it was pushed back to January. Then it was brought forward again to December. Now it's been pushed back to February. And I think it comes out in either a week or 2 weeks. I don't know what...
Oh, really? So it's not out in the States yet?
It's not out in the States yet. No, I'm going based on my advanced screening. By the time this episode kind of gains traction, it'll be out. So people will be able to go see it. And I believe that they've done some more advanced screenings in New York and LA... in the lead up to its release. So I think more people have seen it by now. And obviously it's been released in the UK. But just like Kick-Ass, it's an independently financed by Matthew Vaughn's company, who was obviously a producer before he was a director, because he did Lock, Stock and all that. It was an independently financed, relatively low budget considering the scale of the movie. Much like Kick-Ass, he made it look 100 mil when it was made, I think, only for 30 or 40 mil. And maybe even less than that, I don't know.
Amendment. Actually, the budget of the movie was $60 million.
And I had the pleasure to see it in a preview screening. I also had the pleasure to sit down and have breakfast with Matthew Vaughn last year with some other indie journalists and sit around and chat to the man. So that's on our YouTube page. Thoroughly nice chap. Very kind of English, hip kind of guy. Just a good egg all round, really. Someone we probably would have, like, if he was about 5-8 years younger, probably like someone who would have been in our like group kind of thing. Seems that kind of guy. But yeah, so 20th Century Fox have dicked around with it, and it was quite funny because Matthew Vaughn was just like, yeah, they fucked with it in the States. I have no hope or particular interest what it does in the States. I'll release it in England how I see fit, and it can do what it can do. Very often with these movies, and again, I'll probably have to look up how much it was made for. But very often for these movies, you sell the right, especially if you're an independent producer, you sell the rights to America, as Matthew Vaughn has, and then you sell the rights to the rest of the world, and you already make your money back. You know what I mean? Like, just by selling the rights to distribute the thing that was made by the guy who made Kick-Ass and the guy who made X-Men First Class, both of which were huge hits, you're going to make your money back already. So he's probably not sweating it in terms of opening weekend box office, you know what I mean? And yeah. The advertising of the movie here in the States has been shockingly bad. I mean, something that really frustrated me was that I wrote, after seeing it, because Fox said we could, I wrote a review of the film, but with no spoilers in it at all. It was a general overview about the influences that went into the film, which are very kind of clear, and the direction of the film and the acting in the film and the music and so on, without spoiling any scenes, without speaking specifically to any one joke or any one action sequence or anything like that. I was very, very, very careful to do that. And we all wrote, everyone who was there, who we subsequently all Facebooked each other and Twittered each other and so on, everyone who was there wrote sort of similar articles. Fox came in and had all those articles taken down, whether they had spoilers in or not. And to be fair, there was one guy who wrote a ridiculously, like, spoiler-filled review that I was just like, Jesus, that shouldn't be up at all, because it's 3 months before the movie comes out. But mine was, like, clear, and if they'd read it, and if they'd actually spent any time looking at it, it would have been a very good promotional piece for them to have used. That's not blowing my own trumpet, I'm just saying it in terms of, like, how it could have got word of mouth going throughout the comic book fan community. So they took it down, they pulled it out. They said, no, nobody's allowed to put up these reviews. They took it down not only from Movie Pilot, which is what I wrote for, but also the After Movie Diner and everything else. So we took all those things down. The very next thing they did was release this fucking, like, almost 3-minute trailer that spoils everything. It spoils every action sequence. It spoils every joke. It even spoils the incredibly near-the-knuckle joke at the end of the movie with the princess, the Swedish princess. Like, it even spoils that joke, which, when we saw it in the screening, we were like... That's legitimately, I don't expect to see that in a big multiplex blockbuster joke. It was a legitimate, like, ha, that's schoolboy but very funny, you know what I mean? Like, it was a proper gasp laugh moment. And now, because everyone's seen it in the trailer, they're going to be like, oh yeah. And it was a complete lesson to me how marketing, especially now, flat out just ruins films in terms of the experience of going to see movies in the cinema.
Yes, well, I would say, before we go on to the movies, I looked at your 10 best movies of the year, which I enjoyed, which everyone should look at on the After Movie Diner website.
Yeah.
And the thing you said was interesting I did think it was interesting what you had to say about A Walk Among the Tombstones, in that there's now this sort of package any Neeson with a gun film as Taken kind of a thing. And that refers to, now, I have to say, I do think you could say that Non-Stop was taken on a plane.
Oh, it is.
Quite easily.
You can sell
but
Non-Stop.
Not A Walk Among the Tombstones.
No.
So, and I think you're right to say that that's an interesting point.
Well, they do the same with Statham as well. Like, they sell. Yeah. If you look at the trailer for Blitz and Hummingbird, which were the two London-based dramas he did, they're both dramas. There's like maybe a minute of action in either one. They're both dramas. Look at the trailers for Blitz and Hummingbird versus the trailer for Killer Elite and Safe, which were legitimately action pictures, and they're all the same. All the trailers are the same. It's Statham is back, cracking skulls, and it's like, no, it's not. If you watch Hummingbird, by far his most quiet, soulful, introspective performance that he's done, and I know people are going to laugh at me referring to Statham that way, but honestly, that movie has some real heart and some real intelligence to it. When you watch that, if you watch that as a fan of The Transporter or Crank or Expendables or any of those other movies he's done, you'd be like, what is this shit? And you'd turn it off. Now, if you watch it as a bit more of a well-rounded, like, movie viewer, it would be different. But an action fan sitting down to watch Hummingbird or Blitz is not going to get out of them, or Bank Job or any of the kind of London-based stuff he's done, are going to get anything out of them that you would get out of the kinetic stuff that he's done. And the same goes for Neeson, but the same also goes for spoiling films as well. Kingsman, the trailer for them just ruins absolutely everything, and it's such a shame because, and it's an irony as well, they're so intently focused on the opening weekend and thus massive bucks plus word of mouth to then carry the movie over the next 2 or 3 weekends, that they like advertise it. But by advertising it, that open weekend experience is not what it would have been had an audience gone in simply knowing that it's a James Bond from the 80s mixed with John Steed and Emma Peel from the Avengers throwback British comedy action movie. Like, if they went in with some vague thoughts of like what it was, from the makers of Kick-Ass, if they went in knowing that's what it was, which is what I went in knowing what it was, a lot more fun was had with the film than if you'd seen all this other stuff.
So here's a question for you. So when was the last time, because some of my favourite ever trailers were specially crafted little films used to promote another film in which nothing appears in the actual film. Like my favourite examples are, I always thought the Trainspotting trailer was fabulous.
Yeah.
But if anyone's not seen Trainspotting, you've got to see Trainspotting, and you've got to see the trailer. Like, a lot of people haven't seen the trailer, and the trailer was just amazing. Like, when you were 16, and no, in fact, I would have been younger than that. I would have been like 14 or something. And the trailer comes up, Ewan McGregor strapped to these train lines, and it just seems so fucking mad and brilliant. You're like, I am going to see that.
Right.
And then the other one is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, where they're walking along the pier. That's one of the... And you get a big laugh. It's not in the movie, but you know exactly what you're signing up for, and you're really excited, and you have to go and see it. Yeah. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
But when was the last time someone did a trailer like that? Well...
I can't honestly
think of one off the top of my head.
I'm trying
Write
to
in
think.
and tell us, listeners.
Write in and tell us when the last time was you saw a trailer for something that was not in the movie or was specially crafted.
What do you call that? Like a standalone trailer or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they've done a couple of... Because what they do now is they release, especially with the internet, they release several teasers. And then they go into, like, the main trailer that then plays in cinema screens. And I've got a feeling that there's been a few, like, specialty teasers. But they're normally for either comedy movies or action movies or comic book movies. And they're normally the lead actor or lead whatever simply just, like, coming in with a white background and, like, talking at the screen and then, like, disappearing again. They're not little short films unto themselves, like the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and the Trainspotting one. They're just sort of, hi, I'm Samuel L. Jackson, and I'm going to talk about how great I am for 5 seconds or whatever it is. Yeah.
Well, okay, so anyway, I mean, you know, do write in and tell us, or you know, your favourites or whatever. But
like for example, the teaser trailer for The Expendables 3, which was like it panned out there was Stallone by himself, and then he walked back, and as it panned out, there was all the cast and an airport hangar, you know, like one of those big airplane hangars. Which is not, I mean, that's nothing. That's just like all these people again. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a... Yeah. It was just a visual image to put up on the net. It wasn't a trailer for it. It wasn't, like I say, a little mini story. Yeah.
So, I mean, shall we... So, which movie shall we do first, then?
I say as we're on this tack already, let's talk about Kingsman. And then let's leave Birdman, because Birdman has none of this. Like, all the stuff we're talking about has none of this. Like, Birdman came out basically as a little indie thing with a little sort of esoteric jazz-fused trailer that was kind of ambiguous at best, and then went on to become... like this hugely lauded film that is still playing in New York now, even though it came out before Christmas.
Yeah, so, well, I'm not surprised about that.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's a completely different storyline. Whereas Kingsman, and I don't know, you'll have to tell me what it's been like in the UK, but Kingsman, I follow, obviously having seen the preview screening, I follow them on Facebook and I follow them on Twitter, and 20th Century Fox is doing the most botched job of advertising this.
We are an independent international intelligence agency operating at the highest level of discretion. That was the headline the day after I defused a dirty bomb in Paris. Front page news on all these occasions was nonsense. It's the nature of Kingsman that our achievements remain secret.
How deep does this thing go?
Deep enough. Being a Kingsman has nothing to do with the circumstances of one's birth. If you're prepared to adapt and learn, you can transform.
That is sick. Oh, yes. Very, very nice.
I'm offering you the opportunity to become a Kingsman. Interested?
You think I've got anything to lose?
Oh, there's a lot to lose. I guarantee it.
Valentine's is a threat which affects us all.
Mankind is a virus.
Mass genocide?
I like it.
You are completely crazy.
I look like I do.
Assemble the Kingsmen.
Yeah. What does this do? Electrocute you?
Don't be ridiculous. It's a hand grenade.
Shut up. It's a bit bit much, innit?
Begin countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, party! This is great!
Sorry about that. Needed to let off a little steam.
Stab that then?
This is mine.
Think I'd save the world? Will you give me a kiss?
I'll give you more than just a kiss.
I'll be right back.
Son of a bitch!
The other interesting thing that Matthew Vaughn told us, and he told us this before the fucking screening, which made me laugh. He just walked out in front, like, there's all the 20th Century Fox, like, PAs there who are helping him, and, you know, Mr. Fox has stepped down here, Mr. Vaughn stepped down here, and blah, 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 blah. And obviously all the, like, honchos are there at the screening. And he steps down the front and goes, yeah, so I hope you enjoy this film. 20th Century Fox are really paranoid that it's not going to do any business because it's too English. So if you could all, like, react and really enjoy the movie, and it's not too English, you'll love it, it'll be great, you'll get it. And then he, like, put the mic down and walked off. What is clearly interesting about Kingsman is that someone at 20th Century Fox watched it and went, well, I don't know. You know, it's got all these references to, like, little country churches and English things like pubs. I don't know that people are going to get it. Plus, well, it's got a lot of adult humour. Like, I think it really bothered them, so I think they don't know how to do it. Whereas, the truth of the matter is that English stuff is huge in the US now. Sherlock, Downton Abbey, even when Rick Mayall died, there was a huge outpouring from the US of people who like Young Ones at Bottom. Like being an Anglophile in the US now is like the hipster geek thing to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's just, you know, that I think that'll always be there to a certain extent. But I think probably it wouldn't surprise me.
Oh, and Doctor Who, of course.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that they might have had to be a bit worried about it, which I think would be legitimate, is I can see them sitting around a table and going, "Really, are we doing a sort of Bondy comedy sort of a thing? Like, do we need that? Like, has that not been done? Like, you know, like I can imagine it being pitched, but then the fucker got made, but." I can imagine it being pitched and people sitting there and going, it's not lighting my fire. Like I can really imagine that. I can imagine thinking that myself, you know, because, you know, when you get, you know, perhaps you'd think of like a sort of, it sounds like he's trying to do some kind of a Austin Powers-y kind of a thing. And do we really need that? And
right.
And hasn't that been flogged to death and blah, blah, blah. You know, that has been done. It can't, and even the second and third movies of those are pretty dreadful. There's only really one good film there. I can imagine people feeling a bit worried about it. And I think one of the successes of the movie is that it's surprisingly like, it's kind of doing its own thing. It's wearing its influences, but it just hammers away, and it's very entertaining. It deals with things that, for an English film, are very strange to actually be put up on the screen together and contrasted. I mean, to put a class issue front and centre of your spy movie, and I'm not saying they do it in a spectacular way, but they put class right up the front of their English.
And it was intentional. He talked about it a lot in his interview.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. I mean, because what tends to happen in English cinema is, you know, there's this sort of whatchamacallit, the costume dramery mill sending out, you know, just rolling out pictures about upper class people. There's the upstairs downstairs thing of Downton Abbey.
Yeah. There's the my son wants to dance, but I'm not going to let him dance. Isn't it grim up north? You know.
Yeah. There's the like
kitchen sink.
The grim kitchen sink kind of thing. There's all of those sorts of things. But what this did, for me, and I have to admit, my watching of, the sort of grim, the sort of Mike Lee kind of side of things is not what it perhaps could be. It just doesn't really, it's not something I want to go to cinema and see. Whereas this is like an action movie, and it gives space to talk about that, and I give it a lot of credit for doing that. When it became clear that it was going to do that, I thought, this is going to make me squirm really, really badly, and it didn't. It really, really didn't. Like the message the whole way through seemed to be like, class is not about money, class is not about an accent. Class is about your actions, and that's a really good message, that's a strong, good moral message for young men, like there's been a bit of panic over here about like, you're talking about that thing at the end with the princess about like it being misogynist on this sort of a thing. Personally, I thought like...
There's been a panic about that over there?
Well, the reason why I say that is that I listen to the Kermode show a bit, and a lot of people people are quite right on who listen to the Kermode, who write into the Kermode show. Often, Kermode himself is obviously an extremely right-on individual, and he had problems with both Birdman and this film. And he was saying like, that was misogynist and all sort of thing. And personally, I just thought like, well, it's just Schoolboy.
It's
like,
just a joke.
I think it's giving it.
It's
Schoolboy. It's just Schoolboy thing because that's who it's for. And I think that I thought the class thing was a really good little message to come through there. But the main thing is the main thing about the movie for me is just really entertaining.
Yeah,
which I wasn't expecting. I went in there thinking, I don't know why, but I went in thinking it's going to be all over the place. Firth is going to not really keep me with him. I'm going to find the young scallywag main part irritating. None of those things were true. I liked the main young guy. I liked Colin Firth, and it boshed along, and there was all this stuff happening, loads of great caperish stuff happening again and again and again. It was just really good.
I'm so glad you liked it because we've always had this, that my tolerance level for blockbustery type caperish tosh is slightly higher than yours in general. You know what I mean? Like I'm a big fan of sort of big Hollywood nonsensical action movies and or comic book movies or whatever. And while I thought you would like some of it, I thought you might be a little grey on some of the rest of it. So I'm really, really, really happy that you embraced it and enjoyed it and were excited by it as much as you were. And I completely and utterly agree with you. It does everything it set out to do with confidence and fun and energy and all that other stuff, which is pleasing. I think when he was saying about them finding it too British, yes, there is a lot of like British references and references to British institutions like James Bond and like the Avengers with John Steed and Emma Peel and like stuff like that. But he might also have been referring to the other thing, which I think probably gave them huge amounts of pause, is that it is it's British in its sense of humour in terms of its satirical disregard for hierarchy throughout the movie, culminating with an ending sequence, which I'm not going to spoil, but culminating with an ending sequence which is incredibly like British or English in its I'm just going to say it again, satirical, like disregard for hierarchy. Like the Americans, they do satire with The Daily Show and things like that, and in fact there's quite a bit of a satire boom going on, but it's never quite so just blatant, cutting, anarchic. Do you know what I mean? It's never quite so fuck them all. You know what I mean? It's not got that anarchy to it, which obviously, like, Britain has a bit of a history of that kind of, anarchistic view towards governments or heads of industry or whatever. Like, they don't really, we are mucky and scrappy and humorous about our...
But actually, we don't normally. I mean, that's what I liked about the whole class thing was that, like I say, the whole upstairs downstairs thing and the Mike Lee thing and the costume drama thing. Like, none of this stuff has ever pushed any of my buttons. I've never really followed any of it. So I thought But so you know, my view.
Oh, we're not in our movies. The movies we produce are not anarchy.
No, the movies,
but the TV shows we produce, or the comedies that we've produced in the past, have been very like.
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
cutting and anarchy, and they don't really give a fuck about offending
the young ones. Hey, everybody! I've just had a fantastic idea. Let's raise a people's army and seize control of the state.
No, but what I mean is they don't really give a. British humour was never PC. I mean, it became PC and therefore it became shit. But, like, it never gave a fuck who it offended, whereas American humour was always trying to be inclusive. That's what I meant.
Yeah, that's probably fair. But no, it's just something I give it a lot of credit for, that it really tried to say... you know, Bond, if you look at someone like Bond, now I don't know about, you know, modern, I think of Daniel Craig Bond as actually being quite lost, to be honest with you. I mean, I did quite enjoy Casino Royale. I really wasn't that blown away by the one that everyone said was the best Bond film ever. What was it called again?
Skyfall.
I really wasn't that blown away.
It's awful. It's all over the place.
I thought it was pretty middling. I'm amazed that people went so crazy about it. But anyway, I've always thought of it as quite lost. But the Roger Moore Bonds and the Sean Connery Bonds, certainly. You know, in Sean Connery, he sort of smugly says, like, you forget I took, you know, Oriental languages at Cambridge or whatever. And he's proper a society product, you know.
Right.
He's like you know that he's like a guardian of a particular class and a particular system. He's like a product of the system. And I thought what was good about this was that he sort of messed with that a bit, and he enjoyed messing with it. And the biggest trick about that was, like I say, making that. And I'm ashamed to say I don't know his name, but the guy who played the main role, I just thought he was great. He was just likeable.
Yeah, his name is Taron Egerton.
And it would have been easy to hate that guy. Like, it would have been really, really easy. Like, if his backstory wasn't told properly, you might have just been like, oh, you're just a bit... to be honest, I was thinking, I'm going to find this a bit tiresome.
And you know, before this, he'd only done one movie called Testament of Youth, and he'd done a TV series called The Smoke.
Yeah.
In which he played Dennis Asbo Severs, so I can only assume he was a bit of a white boy from London who had an Asbo, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was also in an episode of Inspector Lewis, so that's all he's done. So this was, for him to carry this whole film basically by himself. I mean, yeah, like Colin, the thing about it is all the adult actors that people are going to see, Colin Firth and Samuel L. Jackson and Michael Caine and people like that, they're all in it. But they're not in it for, like, huge swathes of time. Like, Colin Firth comes and goes and whatever. I mean, the person who's probably next on screen the most is probably Mark Strong, the Q character who has all the gadgets and stuff. He's probably, like, the next one because, you know, we can't spoil anything. But, like, I mean, Samuel L. Jackson's the main villain, so obviously, like, he gets a few scenes. But Kane's in it very little. Firth is in it, but, you know, not in it all the way through, all the time, and the other people are all newcomers. They're all kids, right?
Yeah, and again, I thought it was really good that, because I expected, the funny thing about that ending is that the thing that happens at the ending that, you know, certain people are taking exception to, is that actually I thought, you know, that obviously, like you've said, there's the class aspect to it, but then there's also the sort of anarchic approach to class thing going on there. But the other thing is that I totally thought that, because basically I don't think it's a massive spoiler to say, you know, there is a female agent in it, and there's a certain, and you feel things are going in a certain direction. And I thought it was very good that it sort of went in a different direction, and that didn't happen, because that was very much what was, you know, sort of lining up to, you know, it was all lining up to go that way.
Because they have a whole bunch of new recruits, and they whittle it down basically. Well, it ends up through the plot being two of them, the woman agent and Egerton, or or Eggsy, or whatever his name is, played by Taron Egerton.
Yeah. Now, of course, what we have to talk about in the film is the performance of Michael Caine.
Michael Caine, who turns out...
Roll it!
I'm the boss of the secret society of gentlemen spies called Kingsman. Gentlemen, I want each of you to propose a membership candidate. It's time to make your decision. We're all terribly well dressed, as you can see, except for Eggsy, who turns up and spoils it all.
Where do they dig you up?
It's an adventure, and there's lots and lots of action. Assemble the Kingsman.
They may as well have pushed a wardrobe into his seat and stuck a picture of that grizzled old mush on it, because he is increasingly, in recent performances, I'm sorry to say, he is barely breathing for, huge sections of his performances. And the thing that was particularly bad was, again, connected to the whole class aspect. And, of course, the thing that, there's a particular moment which, to be honest, it's a bit of throwaway. Didn't really need it. But there's a particular moment where a particular thing happens to Caine's voice, and it was just awful. I mean, he was, if anyone, I'm sorry to say it, but if anyone was the weak link in it, it was him. Because, and for that moment, he was okay in between them, but he was very much like he was in Interstellar, actually, which was, he's basically like, just this presence that comes in and is sort of, barely, twitches a facial muscle the whole way through the film. He does pull out one piece of acting in Interstellar. There is a bit of acting. For most of it, he's just wandering around like he's in, I don't know, BHS shopping for slippers or something.
I think Chris Nolan...
That is the amount of commitment he is bringing to these roles now.
I think Chris Nolan just unleashes him on the set. Just walk around in the background, Michael.
Well, him and Nolan go back away, don't they? But and that's why Nolan was able to get... I think Nolan probably went like, well, I've got this one scene where I need a bit, where I think, where I'll sort of give him a kick and make him bring something out of his locker. But for this, I assume it was just like, oh, wow, Michael Caine's interested in doing it. Bloody hell, Michael Caine in my movie, And then you bring him in, and he does that thing. And I'd be fascinated to know if he does actually, walk up to them on the first day and say, you get one take with me, one take, and then I go and have my nap, Like, I really, really wonder if that's the way he behaves, because... I really felt like he was actually almost a drain on the scenes he was in, because he was so like, I don't know, he almost looked not interested to me. And it's funny because I'm watching it with our like Caine and Keaton glasses on, going like, actually focusing on his performance. And I think maybe he gets away with it because he's basically like he's almost like a Basil Exposition, funnily enough, isn't he?
Yeah.
And so all he has to do is sort of trot out this stuff. But he is barely registering in terms of like performance, isn't he?
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, he's in it because of the class thing, because Caine has always been like, it doesn't matter that I have millions of dollars, I'm bloody working class. He's always, this is the thing that he's done his whole fucking career, that he's gone on like chat shows and gone, no, Michael, listen, I'm still working class, me. And you're like, but you do live in a mansion in Monte Carlo. Yeah, I know, but I still like making potatoes or whatever he says. You know what I mean? Like he just has some sort of like folksy wisdom.
When I'm smoking my cigars on a beach in Barbados, there's always a part of me in Elephant and Castle.
Yeah. I'm doing so next to a pile of mushy peas the size of the jewels of Europe. Yeah. So he's in it for that reason, and he's also in it, I suppose, tangentially because of the Harry Palmer thing. Like, I would.
Yeah, that's definitely why he's there, and I get that.
Yeah, from the Ipcris file. Yeah.
Oh, it was. I mean, what did you think of the bit? You know the bit I'm talking about,
right? Yeah. No, I mean. I just watch Michael Caine now and go, oh, look, it's Michael Caine. Like, I know what you mean. It's properly awful, but also quite amusing. But yeah, it does stick out like a sore bloody thumb. In fact, I think I was probably more annoyed and distracted in some weird way by what Samuel L. Jackson was doing. And weirdly enough, in America, rather than the sexism or the classism or anything like that, in America, it's been the fact that he is, like, his character is exceptionally racist because he serves Colin Firth and McDonald's. That's meant to be, like, extraordinarily racist, apparently. Like, that's one of the things that...
How come?
Well, Matthew Vaughn... Well, this is the thing. How come? It was what the producers in America, it's what the 20th Century Fox said to Matthew Vaughn. They were like... Because apparently McDonald's, A, hasn't seen the movie and didn't sponsor the movie. So that whole scene... Like, this is what Matthew Vaughn does, like, when he independently produces stuff. He just fucking, like, does what he wants to do. If there's repercussions, so be it. But... Which is kind of ballsy, because I said to him in the interview, I was like, I thought McDonald's gave you some money, and that's why it's in the movie, rather than Burger King or Wimpy or whatever. But no, apparently the producers came to him afterwards and said, can you cut that out? It makes him seem racist. Which makes the producers, by extension, seem racist.
It makes who seem racist?
It makes the movie seem racist because it makes it feel like a black person would only eat at McDonald's. Is what the producers think when they're watching the movie. Didn't come across to me at all. I thought it was just a funny joke because, again, it's messing with the whole... Come in, Mr. Bond, and have caviar and, fucking quail's eggs or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't think it was super funny or necessary or anything.
No.
But I didn't think...
Well, it's in there for two reasons. It's in there because it's trying to say, like, it's doing a twist on the head of the class thing of Bond or whatever. But it's also in there because it's meant to, like, unnerve Colin Firth's character. You know what I mean? It's meant to be... And also, I guess... Maybe it's a bit of a dig at America. Like, there's a lot of digs at America in the movie as well, or certainly that part of American culture. There is a ton of, like, there's a huge scene which the Bible Belt's going to have a problem with. You know what I mean? In the movie, it's the weird thing is the movie as a whole is not controversial. You're not going to come out in the movie and go, oh my god, how controversial. But living in America and knowing the PC sensitivities, blah, 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 blah. There is a ton in the movie that, like, any one focus group could really be upset about. You know what I mean? If they wanted to get their bee in their bonnet.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's odd that the producers thought it was racist. But, like, Matthew Vaughn apparently sat in... Because 20th Century Fox are just distributing it. They gave no money towards the actual making of the movie. So when they said, could you trim that? Matthew Vaughn was like, no.
Yeah.
Which you just
the thing is, you have to say, don't you? I just think, like, you have to, like, any cinema goer now has to, like, you can't start with what am I going to get offended about. You have to start with, am I not entertained? Am I entertained by what I'm watching here? Because, for all these things that it's got going on, and you have to say, yeah, he is a guy who's probably now, almost when he makes movies, probably like expects, he's probably always thinking in his head, like, how am I going to be a bit outrageous in this movie? Like, that's because of Kick-Ass and everything, that he probably is, like, thinking, like, I need to keep this up. This is, people expect this of me. Like, I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe he doesn't, but... I'm sure that there are people around him who go like, "Oh, that's so Matthew. Oh, that's so Matthew Vaughn. That is so Matthew Vaughn." But the thing
I think you have to
say, is the film you have to start with, is the film entertaining? Because a shed load of films that get made at the moment are not even, stickable with.
Right.
They are, you sit there going, oh, God, like, this is really losing me, or this is really bothering me. Or, like, I mean, that happened a lot to me over the last few years, a lot. And this just kept, you're with it the whole way through. It barreled along. Yes, I mean, the bit that you're talking about that's going to, that would offend, like, half of the United States, I would imagine, was curious and everything, but it made sense within the story. That was the important thing, was that it made sense within the story that was being told.
Oh, of course.
So,
Well, you see, the thing is while I agree with you, like the temptation, I'm sure, for Matthew Vaughn is to see how outrageous he can be. From having met him, from seeing interviews with him, and from knowing that he produced like Lock, Stock, and then Layer Cake and whatever, I think it's just like who he is. Like the best way to give an example is that in England, the word cunt is not particularly offensive the way English people use it. You know what I mean? And it's not like you can use it in a crass way, or you can use it in an over-the-top way, or you can use it in a way that's trying to be shocking. But, like, it's been in the culture for a long time, and it's not seen as a offensive, derogatory term. It certainly wasn't when we were growing up. Maybe
it's pretty bad, man. Cunt's pretty bad.
No.
I can't think of anything worse you could call someone.
Really?
Come on. What's worse than cunt?
Well, no. There's nothing worse than cunt, but what I'm saying is the way we use it. I had friends when I was in Andover who we would call each other that all the time without issue. What I mean is that English people didn't used to, maybe now, but didn't used to, like, get all fucking offended by everything. Certainly not, like, swearing or whatever. There was a whole generation of people who, like, well, rude words are rude words. And there was always your Mary Whitehouses. There were always your, like, crazy PC moral majority. But then mostly we all just got on about it. You know what I mean? Like, we could say fuck and we could say cunt and we could say shit, and it doesn't really matter. Whereas in America, if you say this, in America they have the N-word and the C-word, and like they have all this thing where your brain is still saying like cunt in your head, but like the person's going, well, we don't say the C-word, so you go cunt in your head because that's what it makes you do. It's a thing. Like, you can't use it's a big serious. Oh, it's derogatory towards women, really? It's offensive, and blah, 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 blah. Now, I have friends here who have no problem with the word, and they kind of like it, and they think, like, it's funny, and when English people say it, it's cute, and all the rest of it. But the reason why I brought it up, the whole reason why I brought it up was the attitude towards those two things, right? On one side of the Atlantic, it's one attitude towards that, towards satirical stuff that is particularly sniping about the higher echelons of power, about stuff, comedy to do with religion, comedy to do with biting topics like abortion or gay marriage or whatever it is. Like, all that stuff, while, The Daily Show does its thing and makes sure it's very, like, down the middle and make sure it's covering both sides and it's not being too leftist or too rightist or whatever. All those issues are very serious, hot button issues. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of like blatant comedy made about those things. There's not a lot of either shock value or just genuine, like, who gives a fuck? Let's just make comments about it. There's not that cathartic sense of humour. In the UK, there is. I don't know what it's like now compared to when we were growing up, but like, there was always a kind of stick two fingers up at everything type mentality. And we weren't offended in such huge swathes by a word or by a concept or by a thing. That's all I'm trying to say. Now, that's a huge generalization. Yeah. I know plenty of Americans who are very cool, very intelligent, very enlightened. I'm not trying to say anything like that. But what I mean by that is that this movie is less, or I watched it, less as let's be needlessly shocking, or let's see if we can up the ante on a 8-year-old girl or whatever Chloe Moretz was in Kick-Ass saying the word cunt, which was like the thing that caused everyone a big problem. I don't think it's upping the ante. I just think it's Matthew Vaughn's sense of humour. I just think that's what he's like with his mates. I just
fair.
think that's and whether you like that or not, and whether you take that with you or not, whether that's something you want in a movie or not. To me, when I was watching it, and I've lived over here now 7 years, to me, it was refreshing. Like, to me, I watched it, and it was like conversations you and I used to have, or conversations my buddy Doc, who I do the Dr. Action show with, now have, and stuff like that. Like, to me, it was more of a refreshing, like a conversation we would have in the cellar, where we would make a joke about something in the cellar we never would make a fucking joke about in public, but we would make a joke in the cellar, and we would go, ha, 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 isn't it funny that we're laughing at this pretty taboo subject, right? It was like that, but on the big screen, and it when I came out of it, I felt like happily cleansed by its filth. Like, I felt kind of. Do you know what I mean?
That's a good point. I mean, I think that's maybe that's where the theme comes between that bridges this to Birdman, is that both of them had a sort of refreshing energy to them.
Yes,
to me.
definitely.
I just thought like it was, you know, Kingsman was just packed with energy and confidence and good performances, and it knew what it wanted to do, and it just went along and it did it, and it didn't. And like you say, it wasn't bothered about trying to, you know, steer clear of this and we can't do that and we can't do this. But like you say, I'm not for, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not for a minute saying he goes, how am I going to be a bit crazy? But I guess all that I'm saying is when he does things which are a bit, you know, shocking and different and have this like energy, this like wild sort of energy to them, or like slightly unhinged thing going on, it would only be a problem if it didn't fit with the story. The bits that happen in it, the only bit, you know, the only reason why I have any problem at all with the thing at the end was it was a bit, you know, it makes a kind of, I suppose, if you wanted to get metaphorical about it makes a kind of a class point, but it was a bit like, sort of kind of an ending to the film. It did just sort of make me go, right, and then it was all over, you know.
Right. No, you see, to me,
there was the scene afterwards. Actually, there was the scene afterwards.
Yeah, to me, I think it also plays a little bit on that. Whereas Roger Moore Bond film endings were very carry-on in their, you know, nudge, nudge, wink, winkery.
That's true.
In other words, you know, it would be like, he's attempting re-entry, sir. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. In this movie, there's no nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It's just, boom, there it is on the screen. You know, they're about to have sex, you know. And so it's also sort of subverting that. It's just subversive, just in its general thing.
No, that's totally true.
And so that's how I saw it. And you know, and also, like, look at the humour of Austin Powers. It's very, like, coy and, you know, we're going to cover up boobies with melons. And, you know, it's very sort of, like, end of the pier type stuff. And this was far more... and I don't want to make this like a cause celebre. I'm just saying, like, this was just far more refreshing, and I like to think of it as the Derek and Clive of comic book movies. Like, that's what it is. It's just like, well, a joke doesn't. Nothing has to necessarily be off limits in terms of like making an audience laugh or giving an audience reaction. And what was nice about seeing this on the preview screening is whether it was a gasp, whether it was a laugh, whether it was a whoop or whatever when something exciting happened, the audience fucking reacted. Like, they liked it. Like, they liked being taken on the roller coaster of, you know, 1 minute there's a kick-ass fight scene, 1 minute there's a funny joke, 1 minute there's oh my god, did they say that or did they do that? Like, they loved it. Like, it hit all their senses rather than going into, you know, what we have come to expect from comic book movies now, which is, fine, we're going to sit here and the guy in the blue costume is going to defeat the guy in the black costume, which is absolutely fine as well, and there's a lot of entertainment to be had from those comic book movies, I'm not saying that, but they're very safe. There's nothing really in any of the Marvel movies or even the so-called gritty Nolan movies that's going to put fucking, you know, a pause on anyone's mind. Like, they're all very fine. There's a few graphic special effects with, like, Two-Face's makeup, maybe. But, like, ultimately, there's nothing in any of those movies that make you sweat even for a second or even make you gasp or make you whatever.
But I think this is where it sort of links to Birdman, because this is where, just to briefly touch on what Kermode was saying. So Kermode was saying, like, it's all style, and it gets on my nerves, and...
everything gets on his nerves.
Well, I mean, I really, really like Kermode. I love listening to his show, but, you know, but then I listened to his review after seeing the movie, and I thought, man, I really disagree with him. And I basically disagree with him on the basis of, you know, yes, the film is... So, Birdman is packed with style. I mean, it absolutely leaks style, and ticks and little tricks and little, you know, it's full of that. But my reaction to hearing his view was like, Yes, and isn't it good to have something a bit different in the cinema? Isn't it nice to have someone having a go? Even if it was a failure, which it's not, by the way, but even if it was a failure, at least I'd be able to walk out of there going, well, he tried to do something different. He tried to really take you to a different place. I think the best thing about Birdman, and I'll be interested to see, because I haven't really read, I barely read reviews these days, but what I thought was cool, and the reason why at the beginning when you were saying it's still playing in New York, and the thing which I really give it credit for, is I really felt it managed to create, film New York in a really cool, interesting way.
Yes.
And in one of the most filmed locations in New York, is it Times Square he's filming in at one point?
Yeah, it's basically around the corner of Times Square. Is it St. James's Theatre? I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, and it looks... The thing has a look which is, New York just has... there's just a slight twist on the way it looks. It's beautiful cinematography. And so these are the two things that I got from it. It had this brilliant... Well, I got loads and loads of things from it. But the two things that occur immediately that I really liked about it were the look of New York and the memories it gave to my wife about acting and theatre and the egos and the shenanigans that go on with productions. I mean, we've both done these as well, but obviously she went to drama school and carried on doing it for a while afterwards and all this sort of thing. And I thought it did that. I just thought it did it brilliantly. The sort of chaos of behind the scenes of a theatre, never mind all the stuff about the washed up movie actor and all that sort of stuff. I mean, all of that's great, but what really hit me was look at New York and the sort of chaos of putting on a production. Just brilliant. And also, there is a third thing, which is I've been waiting so long for Ed Norton to do something that I really like.
Right.
And I really, really liked him in it. Because I've always loved him. But he never does anything good.
No.
He never does anything good.
No.
And finally, he did something good.
I've liked him in... Obviously, I liked him in Fight Club. I liked him in the... I thought The Painted Veil was pretty good, although I haven't seen it in a long while, but I did like him in that, although that's a much different film. And then I loved him in this. Just to wrap up Kingsman very quickly then.
Oh, yeah.
Entertaining. Roger Moore era Bond meets The Avengers, the original TV series, John Steed, Emma Peel. Lots to love, lots to enjoy. Leave all your PC nonsense at the door, and it's Kick-Ass meets Roger Moore, James Bond era type thing, and it's a lot of fun with it. Derek and Clive meets comic book movies, whatever you want to call it. Tons of fun. I hope everyone in America goes and sees it when it's released and proves 20th Century Fox much, much wrong, so that we get a few more kind of anarchic British movies. And as far as I'm concerned, the more Matthew Vaughn can, do one for himself like Kick-Ass and then direct a big budget X-Men movie and then go back and doing one for himself like this one, the more he can do that, the happier I'll be. Like Statham does in Expendables and he goes back and does a Hummingbird in England. What England needs is action movies and genre movies. We don't do them anymore. We need genre movies back. I'm going to be covering Villain with Richard Burton from the 70s. We used to make some cool fucking genre picks, some crime films, some action films. Let's do that again. So I'm all for that. I'm all for Matthew Vaughn pumping these out, and I'm really happy you enjoyed it.
Cool.
Do you have any last words on the movie, sir?
No, just I mean, I was meaning to say. So he did X-Men First Class.
He did X-Men First Class, and he was meant to go on to do X-Men. I
thought X-Men First Class sucked, I must say. I mean, I thought that and Days of Future Past were just terrible films.
I wasn't a fan of them either, but
I didn't know when I went to see this. I hadn't put it together that he was the director of that. But perhaps I had subconsciously or something, because I did think this is going to be a mess, and it wasn't a mess. It's tight. It's got a good, strong story. It's got really good performances from unknowns and really established people. There are some shocking moments in it, but I don't think I doubt that most reasonable people would come away from it like feeling offended by it. I think he would feel entertained, and that's becoming, for me anyway, I mean, I don't know about other people, but for me that's becoming an increasingly rare thing. So it's all good.
I just thought it was a really good romp. It's a really good romp is what it is. Yeah. Enjoy it.
How did we end up here? This place is horrible. Smells like balls. We had it all. You were a movie star, remember?
Who is this guy? He used to be Birdman.
I like that poster.
You wrote this adaptation?
I did, yeah.
And you're directing and starring in your adaptation. That's ambitious.
Are you afraid people will say you're doing this play to battle the impression that you're a washed-up comic strip character?
Absolutely not. That's why 20 years ago I said no to Birdman 4.
Birdman 4? You do Birdman 4? Now you're about to destroy what's left of your career. Oh! We should have done that reality show they offered us.
Shut up.
I'm gonna grab up on your ass, fucking choke you out.
You know I'm right.
You're so nice!
Hey, so, why don't you try to rest a little bit?
Face it, Dad. You're doing this because you're scared to death, like the rest of us, that you don't matter. And you know what? You're right. You don't.
Baby, can you understand me now? Sometimes I get a little mad. Don't you know no one alive can always be an angel? When things go wrong, they seem to go bad.
Listen to me. You were the original, man. Let's make a comeback. That's what I'm talking about. You're Birdman. You are a god.
Hey! Is this for real or are you shooting a film?
A film!
You people are full of shit.
Music.
He's a Hollywood clown in the Lycra bird suit.
Yes, he is. But he's going out on that stage and risking everything.
It's about being respected and validated. Remember, that's what you told me. That's how you got me into this shit.
I got a chance to do something right. I gotta take it. Let's go back one more time and show them what we're capable of. There you go, you motherfucker.
Don't be a dick. Let me get an autograph. Dude, you fucking rock.
Anyway, so yeah, back to Birdman. Yeah, it is filmed in the St. James Theatre, which is just off Times Square. I think it's on 46th or 45th Street. I don't know, somewhere around there. And yeah, so when he runs out in his pants and he has to run through the drums and everything in Times Square, like he did that for real. In fact, I remember him filming it, and there was loads of news reports of Michael Keaton in his pants in Times Square. That was a thing on the news. I'm sure CNN devoted a whole hour to it. Yeah. How did Fox News report on Michael Keaton in his pants? You know, anyway. But yeah, so St. James's Theatre. And it's basically, I mean, it's what you've seen in the trailers. It's a washed-up movie actor, which nods slightly to Keaton's Batman past, but in fact was in the script before Keaton even came on board. And obviously Keaton didn't go on to do 3 Batmans or 4 Batmans or whatever Birdmans he's meant to have done in the movie. So there is a change there. It's not a total carbon copy of Keaton's career. And he's trying to put on this play that he's written, produced, and starring in himself. And it's his daughter is there, his sort of slightly emotionally estranged daughter is there, who's also is she also his assistant?
Yeah, she's she's almost like a runner, isn't
Both
she?
these movies, dude, I saw back in November, so I'm trying to figure it out. So she's staying with him and helping out behind the scenes. You've got Naomi Watts, who plays a sort of slightly shrill, panicking actress. You've got Ed Norton, who's the guy who they've brought in to save the play because he's sort of the last big name theatre actor they can kind of drag in. You've got Zach Galifianakis, who plays his panicky agent manager guy. Who else am I forgetting? There's another actress in it as well who Naomi Watts spends time with. I forget who she is. But yeah, and it's basically about behind the scenes of putting this play together and how that then also relates to his life and his future and his past and midlife crisis and all that stuff, all sort of tied into one, right?
Yeah, and it's
Andrea Riseborough is the other actress.
That's right. She's great.
Yeah, well, she was from Oblivion as well. I really liked her in Oblivion, the Tom Cruise movie. I really liked her.
Yeah, I really like her. I think she also played, like, I saw her in something on British TV, and she was great in it.
Yeah, you see, I missed her rise to fame in Britain because I was living out here, so I've only seen her in Oblivion and this, but I really like her.
I'm trying to remember what I saw her in. She's great. I thought Emma Stone was great.
Emma Stone is this is the best. I've always liked Emma Stone. She's a likeable presence on screen, and she's always like fun to spend time with. But she is amazing in this. It's her hands down best performance, and she should never ever waste her I know she needs to make money. She never ever should ever fucking waste her time again playing like the girlfriend role in a comic book movie. Never do that again, Emma Stone. You're an amazing actress.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
And weirdly enough, along with Michael Keaton, the other emotional core to this movie. It's as much about their relationship as it is what he's going through.
Oh, that's right. So I saw Angela Riseborough in The Devil's Whore, which was a... yeah, absolutely. It was.
I saw Andrea Riseborough in Satan's Concubine.
Yeah, it sounds very racy, but it was actually a bit of a disappointment of a English Civil War drama that I think it was on Channel 4. Okay. I'm obsessed with like English Civil War stuff, and I was really, really up for it. And she was fantastic in it, but it lost me quite badly. It also had Dominic West in it, and I was just expecting something really, and like John Sim, and I was expecting something totally amazing, and it was okay.
Right.
But yeah, so Angela Riseborough is brilliant in it. Emma Stone is, like you say, brilliant in it, and totally believable. And what's great as well is that they managed to get a taste of. I mean, it's been a long time since I was involved in something like this, but in a theatrical production. But obviously, when we were in our teens, we used to do quite a few like theatrical productions, and there is a sense of unreality to putting on theatre, which I'm sure that a lot of great stuff has been written about. But that sort of sense of things being slightly removed from the everyday is played out really, really well. And
it's like
talks
panic and artifice, isn't it? Kind of mixed together.
Yeah, but also in terms of relationships and stuff, the way these passions are aroused between people. These like curious, strange passions that sort of spring up out of nowhere and become like incredibly intense and everything. It also does really, really well. There's a fantastic scene in it where, which I can relate to as well, where you become close to someone through their achievement as an artist as opposed to as a personality. Like that's what one, and I don't know whether I don't think it can possibly happen on film sets in the same way. I think it probably happens occasionally, but you're surrounded by
film sets are different. Film sets, from what I understand or what I've read about them, anything that happens on film sets, like Brad and Angelina or whatever getting together, it happens out of a state of boredom because everyone's sat, like actors especially.
Well, we've been in we were involved in obviously a very low budget film. There's a huge amount of boredom involved. Whereas there's a particular scene between Michael Keaton and Edward Norton where Keaton is already beginning to like. For the moment Norton arrived, you're thinking, not sure about this. Keaton's just got the look on his face like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm not sure, we may have made a huge mistake here. And then Norton runs through, and he's massively, his ego is just like, Keaton is virtually like being bounced off the side of this guy's ego. But he makes a brilliant observation about a particular part of the script, and instantly Keaton has this respect and admiration and connection to him through this little moment they've had working something out, just the two of them as performers in the theatre. And it's a very different and unique thing, and it really like sparked and cracked in my memory about like things that had happened when I used to do theatre. And my wife, who's done a lot more theatre than me, who's a lot more of a serious actress than me, she was absolutely she was loving the things about, you know, the sort of massaging of egos and, you know, the sort of, you know, like, because there's a bit where he comes in. Now, you've said, interestingly, you said that you told me before I went to see it, there's a particular role, there's a particular performance which you thought was a standout howler.
Which did you think it was?
Funny enough, when we left, I said to Ham, so what do you think the standout howler was in there? And she was like, I'm not sure. And we got talking about it, and then we just through talking about it, we came around to making the decision, kind of having forgotten about, is there a standout howler? We just gotten around to that. There's something about Naomi Watts' performance in it. It's weird, isn't it? There's something about I don't know what it is. It feels really out of place in the film.
It just doesn't fit. That's what it is. And I don't know if it's like, there's a part of this movie that's to do with, and in fact, the music they use on the trailer and a lot of the music they use in the movie, this jazz thing, which is to do with rhythm. It's to do with bum, 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 right? And there's a lot of like quick fire, quick patter, shouty dialogue, the likes of which that if you watch old 40s movies were just how 40s movies were done. All 40s movies were done like this, they all talk like this, and blah, 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 blah. There was always like this pattern, like, you know, Bogey and Bacall, or, you know, Sidney Greenstreet and Bogey, or whatever it is. Like, there's a lot of this going back and forth in those old movies. This has this rhythm to it, because everything is building, everything is, you know, there's lots of crescendos, there's lots of like breakdowns, there's lots of like shouting matches. There's all this stuff going on. It's very busy. It's very... And every time Naomi Watts opened her mouth, to me, it was like someone pulling a needle off the jazz record and it just going silent. Like, it was like... And then she would just do her lines. I was like... It just... something is just not right about... You're not in... Everyone else is playing their instruments perfectly, and you're just not in the rhythm. And I like Naomi. I've seen her in other movies. I like her very, very much. I really liked her in Eastern Promises. Was the last time I thought she was really amazing. But like, I really like her in a lot of stuff. The Painted Veil, which she's done with Ed Norton before, I thought she was really, really good.
Her scene in Mulholland Drive is absolutely mind blowing.
Right. Of course, yeah, she's great in it.
But I thought the best things about this film was the things that the sort of things that hit me. Well, like I say, the way New York is filmed. The thing about ego was great because it I think it extends to all things in life, or anyone with like any kind of interest in being an artist or a creator of any kind, is that you know, that fragile ego thing. And it's not just scenes of like Keaton going in and like soothing Naomi Watts' ego. It's also scenes of like there's a particular interaction between Michael Keaton and this critic in a bar, and also between Edward Norton and this critic, who's again brilliantly played, but I can't remember her name. She's got an amazing face.
Is it Lindsay Duncan?
Is it Lindsay Duncan? Is that who it is?
Yeah, it is Lindsay Duncan. Yeah,
yeah, she's got an amazing face. Like loads of like brilliant performances in it. But
she's
anyway,
born in Edinburgh,
right? And there are these. You know, the way the ego connects with behaviour, it's brilliant. I mean, there's the scenes where the way Norton deals with her, and there's a particular scene where Keaton approaches this critic who basically holds, you know, a sword over every production in town, and she does the most, you know, extraordinary cutting slap down of the whole enterprise, and it's just brilliantly done. And then he responds to her, and I thought it was, and I thought was particularly brilliant about that was that his response wasn't that brilliant. It was the response of like someone who's actually been, you know, unbelievably wounded and is sort of lashing out at, you know, what he's just heard and everything. It was just brilliantly done. And like,
and may even think that some of what she said is true deep down.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was, the film's full of these really recognisable moments for anyone who's, you know, does sort of creative things. I think that's what was great about it. But so it was the ego, but also performance. Like the thing it has to say about performance, which I think, like I say, really chimed with my wife about, you know, these relationships that get born out of performing together, and the sort of, you know, the bullshit people, you know, all this bullshit that Norton is constantly pulling the whole way through. It's just brilliant. And, you know, he's driving everyone completely crazy, but it's helping to, in a way, it's actually kind of helping to build this momentum to the whole production. And
yeah. Well, it's like the Norton and Emma Stone scenes very much explore that situation of, you know, in everyday life, this is like these two people would just fucking hate each other, or they wouldn't even spend time with each other. They wouldn't even talk to each other in everyday life. But like trapped in this, you know, this cosmos behind the stage, or this ecosystem behind the stage, like, you know, there can be moments where they can connect or flirt or, you know, whatever it is, you know.
Yeah. And I just thought it was delightful. I mean, it was a really, really aggravating viewing for me, because I was, for the first half an hour, there was a guy in the cinema. I was watching it in the local Odeon, and there was this guy. I don't know whether he was on a date or something, but he was with this girl, and he did not stop talking for like half an hour. And the worst thing about it, but it was that it was, you know, it was an almost empty cinema. And when I got in there, I was like, oh, brilliant, it's nearly empty, this is great. And he was right at the back with this girl, and he was talking and talking and talking in this, like, hushed, so it's just audible kind of a way, the whole way through for, like, half an hour. Until eventually I just snapped and turned around and sort of waved my hands at him in a, what are you doing? kind of a way. And he stopped. But it really, really ruined the experience for me, I must say. So I am going to have to go and see it again.
It was the thing I felt was that when I came out of it, I was like, how good to do a movie like that. That's, first of all, it has a camera trick, meaning it seems to all be shot in one take, which weirdly enough, although people have mentioned, did not, like other movies, drown out in critical responses to the film. So it wasn't like everyone just went, oh, well, isn't it wonderful how he's done everything in one take, or the special effects of it. So it's got a camera trick to the whole setup. It's about acting, notoriously one of the most pretentious, you know, outside art critic, one of the most sort of pretentious endeavors, or certainly to make a movie about it, one of the most pretentious endeavors. And, you know, it's got the whole actor playing a slightly parallel version of himself, and an actor who hasn't been seen on the big screen doing anything particularly spectacular for a long time. It's got a lot of stuff about it that could be that other films have had in the past that have managed to sink those other films, or drown out the conversation about those other films, or like just become a cliche or talking point about those other films. Not only does it rise above all those other things, but it's also like completely better than any of your expectations based on what the film is about. And what I likened to it in my review was this idea that if I think to really love it, you don't necessarily have to really love theatre, although it does help if you have some feeling of what that's like behind the scenes. But I think you have to genuinely love film in terms of the acting, the dialogue, the way it's shot. These are the action beats. These are the explosions. These are the car chases. These are the things. Meaning that in an action film or a comic book movie or whatever, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, we've got to get a car chase in here. You know, like the big Hollywood producer says that, right? Well, in Birdman, like every 5 to 10 minutes, there's this bit of acting, or there's this bit of music, or there's something the camera does, or there's something that just makes you, like, you gasp and you grin and you smile and your eyes widen, and it's lush and it's interesting and it's exciting and it's different and it's that's what I got from it. I mean, yeah, obviously I got the plot and the ego and the characters and everything you're discussing, but like the whole one take thing, funny enough, when I went in, I'd completely forgotten about, and it wasn't until about 20 minutes, I was so engrossed with it, it wasn't until about 20-25 minutes in where like there's a slight lull for like 2 minutes after the first initial beginning hectic bit that I was like, oh yeah, this is the one that's all filmed in one take. Like it didn't, I just remembered it, like it didn't even figure to me, and then for the rest of the movie I didn't even really think about it other than to go, man, this is like, I don't even know how they did it. Like there's one movie called Running Time, which is about 80 minutes long, it's all shot in one take, seemingly. It's by Josh Becker, it stars Bruce Campbell, it's in black and white, and it's about a bank heist. And Josh Becker took the idea that Rope in Alfred Hitchcock, which was mainly shot on a stage. Rope is mainly shot from like a single camera moving around, and when the camera does need to cut...
Rope is awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. But it's like watching a play. It's like a filmed play, Rope. The camera is all from one side, and when it does need to cut, it like pans very obviously into the trunk or into someone's back. Like it's very obvious where the cuts are in Rope. And what Josh Becker tried to do in Running Time was hide the cuts in like... It's all shot relatively handheld. And... a lot like Birdman is, although Birdman is clearly Steadicam for a lot of it, because there isn't a lot of shaking about, which I was also really thankful for. Because, like, why don't people use Steadicam anymore? Why don't they use Steadicam anymore? Why is everything shaking about when I go to the movies? It doesn't add anything to it that the cameraman needs to go pee. Anyway, that's another problem. So, but in Running Time, he found a way to hide cuts. Like as someone pushes through a curtain or in a whip pan. So as you whip pan from one actor to another, you can hide the cut because the eye doesn't see the cut because it's blurred and the image is not whatever. So he found ways to cleverly hide the 8 or 9 cuts that there are in the movie, because if you're doing an 80-minute movie, a reel of film lasts about 8 to 9 minutes, and then you have to cut. You have no choice. The way that they did it in Birdman is utterly seamless. I have no idea how they did it, and I have no real interest in finding out. There's a part of like the film student in me that's like, oh my God, how did they do that? And I assume there's a lot of like digital wipes and CGI and stuff to hide cuts and push things together, because you can do so much more digitally now than you could ever do before. But it's still a massive, massive achievement, because the one thing people don't think about when you're filming Steadicam like that and you're filming in long, continuous takes is hiding the camera in mirrors, hiding the camera in shiny surfaces, hiding the camera in windows, hiding where the camera is going to be when your two actors are acting out their scene. So you have to choreograph the camera like a dancer in the scene or like another actor in the scene, so that actors aren't crossing over in front of the camera or changing the eye line or anything like that. It just from that level of planning, it's hugely applaudable and complicated and fantastic and awesome, you know.
Yeah, but it also creates like really nice... It
also had something to do with the storyline. It did help the storyline.
Yeah, it helps. It creates these really nice little lulls every now and then where the camera waits in a corridor, it waits for someone to arrive.
Right.
Or something like that. So which is really, really nice. I have to say, when I watched it, it just wasn't on my mind. Like the whole it's all one take thing, it just wasn't on my mind at all. What I thought was, like you say, I just thought like, I just love it. As a film, this has just got it's so like refreshing and striking and different, and you know, it's got like, you know, a jazzy drum thing going on, and not everyone likes jazzy drum stuff. But if you're seriously getting wound up by that watching it, then I think you're bringing too much baggage to the film.
Oh yeah, completely.
I mean,
it could have been incredibly pretentious, and it wasn't. That's what I noticed most when I came out of it. It could have been incredibly arkingly pretentious, and you could have been like, you could have come out of it and gone, poor Broadway actors. Really, this is one big whiny thing about Broadway actors and film actors. Like, who gives a shit? You can have that attitude, especially in a world like we were talking before the podcast, especially in a world where, like, finances are fucked and wars are going on and children need food or whatever. You could be like, why do I give a shit about what this fucking washed up movie actor does? But you do, and there's an intrinsically, without sounding pretentious myself, there is an intrinsically human thing about the movie, and there are relationships in this that have nothing to do with the fact that they're actors. It's to do with them being human beings who have desires and, you know, dreams and all the rest of it. And it's, you know, it's a film that it's a film that Gilliam could have made if Gilliam, like, got out of his own way. Do you know what I mean? Like, it has a lot of the same themes that Gilliam puts in his films, and that's one of the reasons why I really love it.
It's got a lot of, like, it's got a lot of energy, and it's got, like I say, the thing that links it to Kingsman for me is it has a very sort of free, energetic feel to it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like constrained by a load of baggage, and that's what I really, really liked about it. So do you know why? Because I have to admit, I deliberately didn't read anything about it. I didn't watch any trailers. I didn't see. All that I knew was that brilliant poster, and I was like, okay, that's enough for me. I'm going to see. You know, I'm going to see this at least twice. How did Keaton come on board for it then? Do you know anything about how he came to be involved with the project? Because I love the guy for going, do you know who I'm going to get onto this film? Michael Caine. That's who I'm going to get on, because there's a guy who is, you know, that we are doing a series of podcasts about because we love the guy so darn much.
Yeah.
And actually he's done a whole lot of averageness, but most of his career has been a whole lot of averageness.
Well, I mean,
do you know how he came to be on board?
To be honest, I don't. As far as I'm aware, like, Michael Keaton lives up in Montana or somewhere on a ranch and drives his truck about the place and occasionally gets sent scripts where he either says yes or no. You know, somewhere along the line, a producer of this movie has got to have said, have you thought of Keaton because of the whole Batman Birdman thing? And wouldn't he be so much better than Val Kilmer? You know, like,
yeah. God, imagine that. Christ. Yeah.
So I'm sure that's like how it came up, or why. I don't know. I'm sure that's why he was sent the script. But I haven't, even since watching it, even since loving it, I've like stopped watching sort of interviews and reading up on stuff, because I like the two things that happen with Birdman and Kingsman. The other thing that links them is I went into the movie theater knowing next to nothing about them, having seen maybe a trailer or two for Birdman, but really knowing very little else, and had actual pure cinema going experiences, and came out of both movies being like, woohoo! Fucking movies, woohoo! Like, I came out of both movies just fucking happy about movies. Do you know how infrequently that's happened to me in the last few years? It just doesn't happen so much anymore, and so that's what I took from it.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we'll speak about Keaton in just a minute, but I completely agree with you about the whole, like, coming out of cinema being very far from cinema woohoo over the last few years, because I mean, a huge amount of intake for me has been, well, just like you were saying about the you know, in relation to Kingsman, the superhero thing with the guy in the blue suit is going to beat the guy in the black suit. We know we're going to get there at some point, and you know, and it's about how well we get to that point, which puts a huge amount, and they are just churning these things out. So it's a huge amount of stuff you have there as an option. You go and see a lot of these things because you think, you know, I'm talking specifically about the superhero kind of stuff. You go and see a lot of them because you know that they have huge potential. These things have massive, massive potential. All of these characters have huge, ridiculous potential, but they actually tend to be very, very similar movies. The only ones I can think of that have stood out for me are, funnily enough, I thought Iron Man 3 stood out because it had a bit of, it felt like it had sort of tossed off a few of the shackles
it very consciously does. Watch Iron Man 3 again and realize that he is in the suit in that movie for about 5 minutes. Like even in that final sequence where he gets like 40 suits show up, each time he gets in a suit, it gets shot off him, falls off him, it breaks down. Shane Black and Robert Downey Jr. specifically make Iron Man human in that movie, and that is the genius of it.
Yeah, but it's just it's just to reinforce this point that the things that are great about these two films is that I came out of them going like, man, it's so nice to have watched something that just feels a bit different, and it just feels like there were things in there that I wasn't expecting there to be there. It had a real like energy and vitality, and it just makes me feel like we're not sort of slowly crawling towards the inevitable, death of all cinema kind of thing from, sheer familiarity. Like it feels like actually there's a hell of a lot still there to be mined, and we're just, perhaps what we're seeing is, a little bit of wriggle room coming from the studio system or around it or outside of it. I don't know what it is, but while the studios churn out more and more conservative stuff that becomes more and more, tab A, slot B, other filmmakers are getting more opportunities because it is becoming so deathly dull. But no, the thing I'd say about...
one last thing. I said at the beginning of the episode it wasn't thematically strong, but of course there is also a superhero comic book connection between the two movies as well, because one is based on a comic book and one is based on a superhero, which I presume would have been based on a comic book.
Yeah. But obviously this is a Caine and Keaton episode. Now, I'm going to say something slightly controversial here. Now, I think that Michael Keaton is excellent in it. I particularly thought his strongest bits were actually his actual stage performance when they're actually doing the show towards the end. When he actually does that thing where, after he's done his Times Square thing and he comes in and does the performance. I thought it was great to see how he has a very, very difficult job in this movie. Because he has to act an actor acting progressively better apart. Like, he has to do that. Like, the first few times they're running through it, he's doing it in a particular way, and he's getting a little bit better, and he's finding a little piece here and a little piece there. And then coming to a crescendo of this ultimate performance. And that in itself is extremely hard. But it does mean that, it contributed to the feeling I had from this movie, I have to admit, which is that I did come out thinking Keaton was amazing. Ed Norton, he was better. He was absolutely brilliant. I thought Ed Norton was out of this world good in that movie. And I thought Keaton was great. Don't get me wrong. He was great and did brilliant things the whole way through. But the performance that had me grinning from ear to ear the whole way through it was Ed Norton's. Emma Stone's amazing as well.
Emma Stone's amazing. Ed Norton has a slightly easier time of it in terms of what he has to do and what character he can do.
Absolutely.
Plus, he is the of all the people in the film, he is the comedy role. You know what I mean? Like, at one point, he even gets to walk around with, like, a comedy stiffy. You know what I mean? Like, he's meant to be the one that makes you grin,
This is what I'm saying about why Keaton has such a hard task, is that the performance that I enjoyed the most. I'm not saying that it's wrong to say it's best, but the performance that I enjoyed the most was Ed Norton's, because Keaton's role is actually a lot harder and a lot more complex, like infinitely harder, infinitely more complex. He's got to be having a nervous breakdown. He's got to be portraying an actor having, like, a midlife crisis / nervous breakdown. He's got to be portraying an actor who is taking on a part, getting his teeth into it, working towards the best possible performance of it, while showing various performances of it building up to that. And he's got to be doing the whole reconciling with his daughter and dealing with all of these different people who are involved in the thing of the play. I mean, it's a hugely complex role, and he does it brilliantly. In terms of achievement, I'm sure it's a fucking huge achievement what he does in that film. The way, because he, make no mistake, he is the keystone for the whole thing, isn't he? If his performance wasn't totally up to scratch, the whole thing would collapse.
there are only 2 or 3 scenes that I can think that he's not even in, and they're the Ed Norton, Emma Stone scenes, and then the slightly odd subplot about Naomi Watts and Andrea Riseborough, which I was like, well, what's that? Why does that happen? Like, I didn't really understand.
That was a bit random, that, wasn't it? But I think, but again, that kind of worked for me in the. Perhaps this is where it does become too in-jokey. I don't know, but that worked for me on the basis of the way being involved in a production like that does bring out these crazy, performance does bring out these crazy emotions and relationships. Like, it really, really does.
No, I got that, and I got the whole insecure actress goes down that route thing. I did get that. That did come across to me. To me, though, it just derailed what was.
It was. It didn't.
The Keaton show,
Yeah, it didn't need to be there.
But no, I think. I mean, I've always, like we said, I've always loved Keaton, and I think he has a very interesting energy, and I think he brings a very interesting thing to any film that he's in when he's being used relatively decently. But everything he did in Birdman, to me, was amazing, fascinating, incredible, and can't really talk too highly of it. I know what you mean. Like, Ed Norton comes out of it as like
it's just so much fun to watch.
Yeah. What he does, though, is sort of what he does and what he portrays so well is this like effortless, ego and arrogance, which is always, it's always going to be the entertaining thing to watch. But like that scene where
it's a throwaway comment. I'm not for a minute saying.
No, I know. That scene with Keaton. There was many scenes, but one of the scenes that I remember thinking consciously in my head, like, "Oh, this is a bit of a tightrope, and could this fall apart? And are the performances going to stand up to it?" Was the scene downstairs in the theatre where she's at the bar, or there's a fake bar set up or something, with Emma Stone and Michael Keaton, and he comes in and they have a big father-daughter fight. There were constant moments in this movie where I was on the edge of my seat being like, not that I wasn't enjoying it, but being like, are these two performers going to be able to keep all these plates up in the air and do it with such skill that this scene works and doesn't become either, hackneyed, cliched, pretentious, awkward, or whatever? And not only do they work, but they're better than you could ever possibly imagine. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just...
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, like, in a weird way, and maybe the movie like dragged me in, but in a weird way, like, very early on in the film, I was rooting for Keaton to just knock it out of the park. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And of course, you're meant to be rooting. Like, the genius of casting him, and the fact that he hasn't done a great leading role in so long, is that there is this sort of knowledge, therefore, that there are groups of us out there who are just like, come on, we want to see Keaton like back. Now, look, there's a huge group of people like, oh yeah, can't he just play Beetlejuice again? And I mean, yes, if he does Beetlejuice, great, but like, honestly, no. Let the 80s and the 90s be the 80s and the 90s, for the love of sweet Christ. But
please, God, don't do Beetlejuice again.
Right,
please,
but no.
God.
What I'm saying is, there's this huge group of people who have lots
of. I've got to ask you about something before we finish as well.
Okay.
Remind me that I've said that.
There's an understanding by the filmmakers or by the producers that there is a lot of goodwill out there for Keaton. Maybe not a fan base, but a lot of goodwill. And so when I went in and I was watching this movie, I was just like, there was this back of my brain in a monologue just saying, don't fuck this up, knock it out the park. And when about halfway through you realise that there is absolutely nothing that's going to go wrong with this performance, it's only going to be the most amazing, solid performance and creative performance you've seen an actor give in so fucking long, it's such a joy and it's such a thrill, and you leave the cinema equally feeling like, yes! And, if it's one of those performances, and I know people have said this, but it's one of those performances that if he doesn't either technically, entertainingly, creatively, any aspect of his performance. If he doesn't get a fucking Oscar for this performance, then to hell with the whole fucking award-giving thing, and to hell with it anyway. But what I mean is, there is flat out not a better performance than this performance. And I loved David. I'm not going to be able to pronounce his last name, but I love the guy who played Martin Luther King in Selma. I thought he did a absolute knockout performance as well. But it's nothing compared to all the plates that Keaton is juggling, both technically and creatively in Birdman.
Well, I agree with you anyway. I think Keaton has to get the Oscar. Personally, I think that Edward Norton has to get the Best Supporting Oscar if he's up for it. I don't know, and I'm as mixed feelings about awards as the next man, but he really should. Keaton really should get something.
It's like when Bill Murray was up for the Oscar. The problem with Lost in Translation is it's not Bill Murray's greatest performance. His comedic performances are far better than what he does in Lost in Translation.
Groundhog Day is his greatest performance.
It's amazing. So when you, because they don't award comedies, the problem with the Bill Murray Oscar was Bill Murray deserves an Oscar, right? Bill Murray as the actor, the performer, the guy who's had this great career, right? He deserves, his performance as Steve Zissou in Life Aquatic is amazing.
It's awesome. Yeah.
So he deserves an Oscar. That movie, Lost in Translation, though, didn't necessarily deserve an Oscar. However, the fact that Sean Penn beat him, and Sean Penn already had an Oscar, I was like, oh, can we stop giving Oscars to Sean fucking Penn? Who cares? Craggy-faced, miserable guy who picks craggy-faced, miserable movies. I don't I don't care. So, that was my problem with that. With this year, though, I have not seen a better I just hands down haven't seen a better performance in 5 years from anybody. It's so good.
No.
Not that he has to juggle so many things. Not that you're aware that he has to be thinking of 10 different things every time he opens his mouth.
To be honest with you, I do give them credit for even involving Birdman in the mix, because it could well have just not been involved. I mean,
it's a huge, huge critical darling. I mean, everyone loves it over.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
And I think there's this huge groundswell. People want Keaton to take the podium. I feel like this positive energy behind Keaton, because he's just
that
this...
I would watch.
Right.
I mean, from that perspective, it's the first thing at the Oscars that I've given a shit about in quite a long time, actually. Quite a long time.
Yeah, there's two things I care about this Oscars, and that is that Birdman gets awarded a shed ton, and that Selma should have been nominated for a lot more than it was. Because Selma and Birdman, they're 1 and 2 on my best movies of last year.
And you're not that blown away by Grand Budapest, right?
No, not at all. To me, Grand Budapest, it's a fine Wes Anderson movie, but it's nowhere near his best movie. The Raw Tenenbaums and Steve Zissou. It's the three. It's Rushmore, Tenenbaums, and Life Aquatic, back to back, are three of the greatest from one filmmaker. Three of the great. It's like Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, and Goodfellas. It's it's like that level of greatness. And so all his other ones, I like, and I watch a lot of Wes Anderson films, but none of them have come close to those three. And Grand Budapest is his most sort of comedic knockabout, doesn't really amount to anything. It's a lot of fun, it's very entertaining, but there's nothing in it that comes close to the emotional male relationship storylines that are in any of his other movies. Because all his other movies are about quintessential, deep, interesting male relationships that rarely get written about. And Grand Budapest is just it's like a Kenny Everett sketch or a Benny Hill sketch. It's just it's this, and it's great, but it's it's not about anything. It's not about anything. It's just Wes Anderson makes a knockabout.
I was reading a review the other day talking about how it's all about. There's big things in there about the Holocaust and stuff. I mean, I don't know.
No.
I think, I don't know about that. But,
there's an underlying thing of Europe.
Okay, so I've got to ask you a couple of things here.
Anyway.
But just to say, by the way, I wound up staying. My wife was away for the weekend, and I wound up staying awake for watching what turned out to be a 4.5-hour documentary about the Holocaust, which was part 1.
Jesus Christ.
Which is called Shoah, which was completely amazing. It's on iPlayer at the moment. And
you are becoming Alvy Singer in...
it was totally amazing. The thing about this, I just got to really quickly say, the thing about this that was totally amazing was that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was filmed in the 80s. It's filmed in Poland before the wall came down.
Right.
And he's speaking to a load of people who lived around Auschwitz, all of these people, farmers and people who lived in these towns that were like cleansed of Jews. And obviously, because they're behind the Iron Curtain, because there's no like news, there's virtually no news media behind there. There's only propaganda, flat out propaganda.
Right.
The people he speaks to are entirely open and honest. They have no concept of the West's view of the Holocaust and everything. So they say what they think, and it is chilling what they have to their opinions on the Holocaust and stuff. It's utterly chilling, and it's it's a mixture of touching and affecting, but then also there's this whole thing there which is really, really fucking terrifying, and it's totally worth looking at. Sorry, that just popped into my head.
What was that called?
I think it's called Shoah, Shoah. I mean, if I don't imagine many people listen to this are going to watch a 4-hour part 1 documentary about the Holocaust, but it was completely amazing.
You sound like that scene in Annie Hall where she's like, I don't want to watch a 3-hour documentary about
Sorrow and the Pity. But anyway, that was amazing.
It's the epilogue. It's the epilogue. We've done talking about those other 2 movies. Now we're going to talk about something else. It's the epilogue. It's the epilogue. Yes, we're done talking about those other 2 things, and now we're going to talk about something else. Yes, now we're going to talk about something else. Now we're going to talk about something else. Yes.
I have now. We have to wrap up. I think we can both say you have to go and see these movies. They're totally amazing. Now I have to ask you one thing before we wrap up, because this may take you. It may take you 3/4 of an hour to cover how outraged you are about this, or you may just sort of sniff, cough, and dismiss it. I don't know. So I saw this recently. I thought, I wonder what he will make of this.
Are you going to say the Evil Dead TV show?
No. All Female Ghostbusters.
Okay, the All Female Ghostbusters. I'm not outraged by it. Like, they have remade all the films that I care so deeply about, and I have been scarred so routinely that I am now made of scar tissue and you can't hurt me anymore. Can 4 women dress up in Ghostbuster uniforms and, like, rehash shit we've already seen? Of course they can. No problem with that at all. But should they? No. Like, it's just... Okay, the moment Bill Murray said he's not going to do a 3rd one, knock it on the head, firstly. But even if you are going to continue, Howard Ramis is dead. Ivan Reitman had once no business with it. So you're going to be left with what? Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson. And they were still planning with a Ghostbusters 3, right? So knock it on the head, Aykroyd. I don't know if you need to, like, pay for your vodka processing plant up in Canada, wherever the fuck you're living, whatever you're doing now. But knock it on the fucking head. Then they're like, oh, we're going to do this all-female thing, and we're going to get the guy who directed The Heat and fucking Bridesmaids and everything else. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm just incredibly cynical about it, and I think it's a real shame. I think that, and I felt the same way about Bridesmaids, was that I think that we do need more female-centric comedy. I think that Kristen Wiig is definitely someone to do that. I think that there are some other incredibly talented, funny, intelligent women to do that. I don't even know what I
think what the funny thing is when I heard it, I thought, well, I had a lot of similar feelings to you, because I agreed.
I'm just cynical about it. I'm just like,
I agreed with what you thought about Bridesmaids, which was it was a good film that felt like someone had come along and put a load of fart gags into it, basically.
Right.
Like it didn't need them to be funny and stuff.
There was a really interesting, strong concept in the opening few scenes, and they threw it out the fucking window to make everyone an outrageous caricature.
Well, I did like the whole thing, but there were just these big chunks of it where I was like, man, this is really weak. Like the whole they all have diarrhea thing was super weak.
No, only because I know only because I genuinely know a bunch of people who have the always the bridesmaid, never the bride syndrome, and who genuinely have either funny things or emotional things to say about that situation as women in their 30s. And the movie started that way and could have been a very interesting look at that, and instead devolved into drunk on a plane, shitting my wedding dress, kind of awful, destroying the bachelorette party. Like it just devolved into a bunch of farcical, unappealing scenes rather than this interesting friend dynamic and this jealousy about the other friend, which is a very true woman thing. I've seen that happen with women where they get jealous of other friends and friends of friends. Like, that exists. And there's so much intrigue and comedy and entertainment to be mined from that. And instead we get Kristen Wiig destroying a fountain, drunk on a plane and shitting a wedding dress. Like,
Yeah. Well, the only thing I thought about the female Ghostbusters was, well, I agree with you that it has sort of Aykroyd scratching his head, going, well, now that everyone is either dead or refuses to be in it, what can I do to make this happen? Right. Because apparently Satan himself is demanding that this happens. If I'm gonna he is determined that it's going to happen in some form,
right?
And if it is going to happen in some form, the only thing I will say for that is it at least is better than the handover to the younger generation thing, which I hate. I hate that with a passion, that thing. I mean, Blues Brothers 2000 is just the most horrible mess.
No, I mean, that I will agree with you. Handing it off to Seth Rogen.
They would at least have to go right back to the beginning and give it a complete rewrite, instead of basically going, which is what I was terrified about the rewrite thing. Well, I suppose they will still do this anyway. I was going to say, sorry, carry on.
My biggest problem with it is that it's a Ghostbusters movie. First of all, who are these people who think that Ghostbusters is a franchise? Ghostbusters was a thing that didn't even last long enough to support its sequel. By the time the sequel came around 5 years later, everyone went, "Oh, this is shit." Even though the sequel is perfectly fine, everyone goes, "Oh, the sequel is as funny as the first one. It's no less ludicrous." Like, everyone goes on about the first one like it's a fucking classic, and it is. But it's a ludicrous premise that is saved, right, by the charming nature of Harold Ramis, a hilarious physical performance by Rick Moranis, and an incredibly witty one-liner filled improv performance by Bill Murray. That entire movie is solved by those things. And then you have Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd and various other things happening. And it's all great and it's all wonderful and it's put together really well by some very clever people. But everyone knows, the story with the original Ghostbusters was Dan Aykroyd showed up with a 2 phone book sized fucking script that sent them off to hell and had them in space and had them going all over the place. And Ivan Reitman and Howard Ramis sat down and went, "Take this out, boom, take this out, boom," and pared it down to basically being a version of Abbott and Costello Meet the Monsters with SNL guys meet ghosts, right? And then the sequel does what all comedy sequels did in the 80s, rehashes the idea of the first one, and does it in an, actually, if you watch the second one again, a perfectly decent, perfectly funny way.
I like the second one.
I love the second one. Peter McNichol in the second one is fucking hilarious. And Bill Murray is as funny. And everyone says, but the Statue of Liberty moving is ridiculous. I'm like, the big Stay Puft Marshmallow Man isn't ridiculous? Shut up. Now stop it. So, but the Ghostbusters franchise, along with the lunch boxes and the merchandising and the real Ghostbusters cartoon and blah blah blah, that was over by the early 90s. There's no Ghostbusters franchise. It doesn't exist. Like, stop trying to make everything from the 80s that had one or two movies a franchise.
Because they're selling a load of DVDs and someone's going like, oh, selling a lot of DVDs. Like, there's a market for this kind of a thing. And that's the only reason I can see.
No, I think it's even worse than that. I think it's literally that. There are some of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s loving this stuff and are fanboys of it, do podcasts about it, write music about it, go see it multiple times when it plays at a midnight screening somewhere, whatever it is, and hold it very dear. And there's other people who grew up watching it in the 80s and 90s who equally like it, but don't have any kind of creativity about like trying to generate their own stuff, either influenced by it or whatever, who turn around and go, oh man, I would love to make a Ghostbusters movie. Like someone goes, I would love to make an Indiana Jones movie. I would love to make a James Bond movie. Like Quentin Tarantino always wanted to make a James Bond movie. Like people who grow up, they want to do this thing. They never should do it. Like, it should always stay as a fucking dream, or they should write their own version of it. But this idea of, like, everything has to be a rehash, a franchise, a reboot, a reimagining, a blah, 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 blah. Like, it being all female is the last thing that bothers me about it. Like, make it all fucking ferrets or all fucking whatever. It doesn't, like, it. Who cares? The only thing that bothers me about it being all female is they've gone, okay, so we need the skinny, wisecracking, attractive one. We need the schlubby, gonna fall over, be the thing. We need a black one, so get a black one. Like, it's like they've just put together this bunch of people where they've gone, well, we've got 3 white ones and a black one. That's what Ghostbusters is all about, right? 3 white ones and a black one. One of them's a bit chubby and a bit like that's Ghostbusters. It's just, it's so awfully cynical and awful. And I'm not to take away anything from those actresses. Like, it doesn't matter the colour of your skin or the size of your body. If you're funny, if you can do it, great, go right ahead. Doesn't fucking matter. I'm not saying that. I'm saying from a marketing man's perspective, they've lined those people up because they've gone, yeah, that looks kind of what it would look like if the Ghostbusters were female. There's no interest in trying to form a story, cast people who are right for the roles, write an interesting script, come up with a new idea. There's nothing interesting about it at all. Like, don't do ghosts. Do that they're all fucking something, like, do something. I know,
well, that's what I was going to say. Like,
do Abbott Costello Meets the Monsters, but with women. Yeah. Do fucking women versus Frankenstein, or women versus, like, do something. Do them versus vampires if you want. I mean, we've had enough shitty vampires.
That's what I was going to say. Is that that's always what I feel about the sort of, you know, the reboot, rehash, remake thing. Some things don't have that, but if you want to go like, oh, if you want to be inspired by something and sort of pay homage to it, that's fine. That's totally cool. Like go away and do something. Like if your idea is like, oh, it could be kind of like, I'd like to do so. If Aykroyd had gone, I'd like to do something Ghostbusters-y again, as in something that's completely ludicrous premise, knockabout comedy, a bit of an 80s sort of, atmos to it. Set in New York kind of a thing, like use those kind of elements to it. And then, and like you say, like even if you make a choice as, as basic as, but at this time, I'll do it with, ferrets or whatever it is, then that's fine. That'll take you off somewhere new. You can go off. You might then discover some new things. But like you say, it does feel like all that's going to happen, whatever they do, whether it's all women or all ferrets or all, whatever, they'll just be constrained by these.
Right. Well, the double-edged sword of having a reboot is this: it has a built-in audience, right? Which you could argue that cast has anyway. Especially if you have the filmmaker behind Bridesmaids and The Heat, which were both huge, massive hits. Melissa McCarthy has a built-in audience, and Kristen Wiig has a built-in audience. So, like, that's tangible anyway. But you could say, okay, Ghostbusters has a built-in audience, but it also has massively built-in expectations, and that seems to be the part that no one ever thinks about when they do a reboot. They think about the audience, but they don't think about the massive expectations people have. And by the way, having an all-female Ghostbusters is sort of as ludicrous, stupid, and borderline offensive as having a all-black Ghostbusters or all-gay Ghostbusters. It shouldn't matter the gender. It shouldn't matter the colour of the skin. It shouldn't matter none of that should be important. And I've read two articles. I've read one that condemns it and one that supports it. And the support for the all-female thing is interesting, because what the support for the all-female thing says is, while Hollywood doesn't appear to be ready for what I would like to see, which is female directors and female comedians or female actresses or whatever it is, doing their own thing, telling their own stories, becoming empowered, telling stuff that, rather than all rom-coms being made by guys for women about horrible shrieking shrews and insecure women who think they need a Prince Charming to sweep in and save them. Have women tell their fucking side of the story in a comedic, interesting way of the lives they lead. I would rather that. And make it fantastical. Make them fight monsters or ghosts or Godzilla or whatever it is. I don't care. Have women action movies and women genre movies and sci-fi movies. Couldn't care less. Make them, but make your own stories. Make your own interesting stories. And the pro for the all-female Ghostbusters thing is that while Hollywood has no time to seemingly plow a lot of money into females generating their own stuff, although that is slowly changing with Selma and with the Soska twins making good horror movies as female double act and so on and so forth. And there are more female directors now than ever before. What they are willing to do is take chances and go, well, what if we take Ghostbusters and put women in it? Or what if we take the buddy cop thing and make them women? Or what if we do this and make it... They seem to be okay with a financially safe formula as a testing ground to see if women will perform well, which is an utterly ludicrous, narrow-minded, misogynistic, idiotic thing to do. But at least it's giving... The pro to it is at least it's giving women a step into the waters that from which they can then expand and start making their own movies in a much wider and better way. You know what I mean? And so from that side of it, I totally get it and I totally understand it. But from because it's Ghostbusters, the story becomes all-female Ghostbusters rather than...
So you've got the uniforms and you've got the ambulance and you've got the building and you've got like Slimer and all this sort of stuff, and you go, and it's just like
are they going to do a female Slimer? Are they, who's going to play Dana? Is Dana going to be played by a guy now? Like, I mean, just reversing the gender roles doesn't make it a pro-woman movie. I don't care how much you say
no,
that.
but I mean, but the thing is it becomes whatever it is, whether it's all female or whether it's like Dan Aykroyd and some squirrels, like whatever it is, it becomes trapped by.
I hope Dan Aykroyd and some squirrels show up.
That would personally, I would rather see that. Like, I would rather know what I would rather see. I would rather see the original Ghostbusters 3. I would now, more than anything else, like to see the original Ghostbusters 3 draft that Dan Aykroyd first showed up with, that Harold Ramis took one look, that Bill Murray took one look at and went, no. Like, I'd like to see them make that with whoever Dan Aykroyd can get, because it's got to be as depressing as that, whatever happens. And I'd at least rather see an authentic Aykroyd experience than whatever's going to come out now. Because what will happen is, just like with the Robocop thing, it will have this like, well, you've got to have this and you've got to have that and you've got to have this. And it actually becomes sort of trapped by it.
Right.
And you can get like a really good writer on board. Like I think the guy who they brought in to write Robocop was like this guy who they're like really, really excited about as a writer. But he obviously was told, you've got to have Ed 209 and you've got to have OCP and it's got to be in Detroit and you've got to have, you've got to have like The Gun. And, he's got to look a certain way and blah, blah, blah. Like they come up with all this stuff and they say all of this has got to appear through it. And the worst thing about it was like, oh, and we want you to like reference some of the famous lines because everyone loves the lines in Robocop. So can you use some of those lines in it? So it becomes trapped by it. And there's a different movie, just like we talk about with the remake thing. There's a different movie there where he obviously started to write a Robocop remake and went, oh, actually, I'm interested in
this storyline about drones and all that kind of stuff.
Right. But also he was interested in the stuff in the lab, wasn't he? About like the stuff about them his relationship with his doctor and the sort of rehab sort of story kind of a thing going on. Different story with its own value, but then he has to keep on twitching back towards the corporate corruption Ed 209
For
story.
example, there is a new movie coming out called Chappie, and if you watch the trailer, Chappie is basically Short Circuit meets RoboCop. That's exactly what it is. It's Short Circuit meets RoboCop, right? It's by Neil Blomkamp, right? And when I watched the trailer, I was like, oh, that's Short Circuit meets RoboCop. But it could be good. It could be interesting. It could be different, right? At least that is called Chappie. It's about a different robot. It's set in a different place. It's going to be relevant to now in terms of satire rather than trying to, like you say, use tropes and stuff from other movies. And if it has a passing resemblance to other movies, well, of course it is. Like if you do a detective movie now, there's 100 years of detective movies that you could link it to. Or if you do an action movie now, everything's like duping on Lethal Weapon or Die Hard. Like that's not the problem. You should be able to tell your own stories. And like you say, when the guy's writing the RoboCop remake, he's like, oh, maybe I could do the robot as a metaphor as a rehab thing. Or maybe I could do the robot as a metaphor for drones and all that. Like maybe there's some interesting political and socio stuff I could talk about here, but oh no, it has to be a RoboCop movie. And you know, that's the biggest problem with all these things. And also the other thing that they forget is that nostalgia is nostalgia because it's in your memory. Right? It's not because it's like you're absorbing it every single day. Nostalgia is nostalgia because it's in your memory. When all those TV shows came out on VHS, Dukes of Hazzard and Knight Rider and Street Hawk and Airwolf and A-Team and that, there was a whole period in the mid-90s or slightly earlier where Playback, I think it was, were releasing all Wonder Woman and all those, the Hulk, all of those on box sets. They all suddenly started coming out, right? And I bought and watched a whole bunch of them. And you know what I found out? The only one I can still rewatch now as an adult is the A-Team. Knight Rider was like so fucking tedious and dated, and like the Dukes of Hazzard is like horribly dated, and you know,
Airwolf is horrible.
Airwolf's so. But that doesn't mean that when the Knight Rider theme tune comes on, or when I see Kit the Car, I'm not like, yeah, fucking Kit the Car and Knight Rider. Because it's in my memory, but not because I'm sat there fucking watching it. And not that I want Hollywood to go out and make another Knight Rider movie because I happen to have a slight nostalgic, you know, rose-tinted spectacle view of the theme tune. I don't want like, and this was the problem, but you also run the risk of if you change it too much. Look at the A-Team movie. By changing it too much, by dumping the air conditioning unit on the van at the beginning of the movie and basically pissing over everything that fans of the TV show actually wanted in the movie, which was them all in the van doing like cool, groovy stuff. By going, fuck that, we're not going to do that. We're going to have them falling out of an aircraft in a CGI tank, right? Because we can. By doing that, you also then piss everyone off and fuck everyone off and be like, well, this isn't the A-Team, so why even bother to call it that, you know? So
Well, I personally think, I don't have a problem with the, like, going with the remake per se, because I think there's a lot of things that I think there's a load of movies that were really good ideas that were utter failures, and you could go back to them and go, Jesus, I could do that a million times better. And I think there's certain like TV and stuff that doesn't have that never had that much personality, but had little bits and pieces to it that actually have a lot of room for development. I think the question is if there is, you know, where do the scales stand in terms of room for development? And in terms of Ghostbusters, you have to say, when even the second movie, like just as you describe it, is basically a rehash of the first one, just like a straight rehash, you have to kind of conclude it had a really, really, really strong thing with like the design of the ghosts, like a ghost sidekick, the song, the 4-person thing with the, you know, the geek, the weird one, the charming one. You know, they had this whole really strong setup to it. It can't be developed any further. It's just that's where it is. And what they managed to do, and I think 2 deserves a huge amount of credit for it, they managed to find some more jokes within that space. They managed to find some more jokes. But if you watch the two of those movies back to back, maybe that's the problem with these things. Maybe the people who are sort of desperate to greenlight that movie just need to be sat down and watch both movies back to back, both of them, and maybe they'd come out going, actually, I don't know that there's a great deal more to be done here. Do you know what I mean?
Right. No, I find the thing with the Ghostbusters thing as well is that it's become this all-female thing. So have they done one of two things? Have they taken the existing script and, like, femaled it up a bit? Or have they gone back to the drawing board and gone, well, we're going to tell the Ghostbusters story, but let's put in a bunch of, like, gags about time of the month or whatever. I mean, who knows what these awful, awful writers are thinking about. And, in fact, what was really interesting, and this will show a sign of the times, was when... since the Expendables started, they've wanted to do a female version of the Expendables, right? And
really?
Yeah. Which, again, is ridiculous. Just put females in the Expendables, right? Like, there doesn't need to be a female version of the Expendables. You just go, well, women can do action too. Get Cynthia Rothrock in there, get Pam Grier in there, get Sigourney Weaver in there. Like, just put them in the original franchise that exists. I don't need to go and see, like, oh, well, this one's going to be for women and this one's going to be for men. No, just put them all in the movie together. Do you know why the Fast and Furious franchise is the most successful franchise right now? Because everyone is in that movie. There are women, there are Caucasians, there are Europeans, there are Mexicans, there are, like, everybody is catered for in that film. And I don't mean that every movie has to have a multicultural or multi-gendered cast. I just mean that if you don't bother to think about those things and just tell the story or make the movie you want to make, things are more successful. But when you think, like, oh, this has got to be for women and this has got to be a thing, it's a problem. When the script for the all-female Expendable movie came out, there was huge outcry and they had to go back to the drawing board because the script was so unbelievably sexist. Because instead of sitting down and going, well, we'll just write an Expendables movie, but we'll happen to cast women, in the same way that Romero sat down and wrote Night of the Living Dead and just happened to cast an African-American guy because he just happened to be the best actor for the role. Instead of doing that, they sat down and went, why would women be the only people who could break into this evil guy's lair? Oh, I know, we'll make the evil guy have, like, a harem and we'll have them all break in as comedy prostitutes. That'll be funny, right? Because women can only play whores. Like... this was their idea. They were going to do an Expendables movie where the only reason they could break into the bad guy's island was because they happened to all be able to dress up as whores. And I'm like, my jaw just hit the fucking floor. And I'm like, this is 2014 when I read this. I'm like, that's your fucking idea? Oh, because women can only be, like, just women fight in the military now. I don't know if you've noticed, pal. Like, they've been fighting forever. Like, just make them women mercenaries. Just make them action people. Like,
absolutely.
So
absolutely.
The same thing is with Ghostbusters. What are they going to do? Like, are they going to make lots of just tell a ghost. If you want to tell a Ghostbusters story, if you want to tell Ghostbusters 3, and you want to happen to cast women in it, great. But that's not what they've done. They're very clearly making the all-female Ghostbusters, which is a totally different movie than making Ghostbusters 3 and you happen to cast women in it. That's a different film, because then you can tell the story that Ghostbusters 1 and 2 told and happen to cast women. Or you write an all-female Ghostbusters and they're bringing jokes out about fucking, oh, men, eh? Or, like, time of the month, eh? Or, I like cupcakes but I get too fat. Or whatever the fucking cliched, horrible female comedy realm seems to fucking be in movies these days that I absolutely fucking hate. So it's...
Well, that was the brief, concise answer I expected.
Dude, I tell you what the fucking clincher will be for me on this movie, and I've just had this thought. Okay, if by the end of the movie, whoever the male love interest is, because I'll have to have a Dana substitute who's like Dane or whatever, a male thing. It'll be whether by the end of it, she is empowering with him or she is subservient to him. That'll be very, very interesting. Because by the end of all rom-coms, all the women in it, even if they've been the protagonist, are subservient to the guy, no matter how dickish, no matter how dopey, no matter how stupid, no matter how crass, no matter how many times he's cheated on her. The guy shows up at the wedding, breaks up the wedding at the end, breaks up a wedding, like breaks up the one day that we're told women think about all their entire lives. He turns up, breaks up the wedding, and she falls romantically into his arms and goes, oh, Bevis, So, like, if that happens at the end of the all-female Ghostbusters, then fuck it. But if it happens that at the end of it, they're the strong ones and they're the good ones and they're the whatever, and he's like running after them and having to be around them.
I don't think the problem will be the sexual politics behind it. I think it will have. I agree with you that the main point is that, you know, what is the motivation for it being made, and, you know, and the problem of it becoming trapped by the various box ticking that you are subjected to by doing the you know, like I say, with the song and the ambulance and Slimer and the building.
Right. Well, that's the thing for any remake. I mean, that's the thing for any remake, and that I agree with you on. I was only trying to talk about the female thing just because that is the story they're making. I would rather see or read or watch the film that comes from the script that is written by a bunch of sci-fi, nerdy, comedic girls who want to make a female-centric sci-fi comedy than I want to see the female Ghostbusters. If the female Ghostbusters leads to there being more movies like that, like this one article I read suggests, brilliant. But I don't think it will. I would rather see that script. I would rather see a Black Widow movie from the Marvel universe. I would rather see a decent Wonder Woman movie. Not that we're going to get it. I would rather like anything like that. I would rather they bring back Buffy than rehash Ghostbusters, because at least it's a female character from the get-go. But anyway, wonderful conversation with you, sir. Point. Went to some great areas and some great corners of the pop culture world, and I couldn't thank you enough, man. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
No worries. It's great to speak to you, man.
Scares me to death when even the good dreams make me sad. I know faith in conviction's wasted and costly. I can't even trust myself when logic and reason feel so bad. And I know it's not just me, Lord, 'cause everybody falls. And I know it's not just the faithless believers too. Restless night, a lonely masquerade without an end in sight. My brother, it's okay. One day we'll laugh it all away. Just as fast as I can. All hope is always a bitch when even the fallen sky shines bright blue. So just kill me, satisfy and fulfill me. I can't even trust myself when even the dark side feels right too. And I know it's not just me, Lord, 'cause everybody falls. It's not just the hopeless dreams too. Times must cope with another restless night. A lonely masquerade without an end in sight. My brother, it's okay. One day we'll laugh it all away. Back so hard before the weight breaks you, and the meaning in all of this escapes you. But one way or another, we're all mixed up. It's okay, my brother. Another restless night without an end in sight. Brother, it's okay. Laugh it all away, hey, hey. day.